Tonight, from the Lady in Black, we've finally reached the start of our 4-race, 8-driver run to an Oval World Championship. It's been the talk of the town all season long. What effect will the first ever playoffs at iRacing's top level have, and who will take advantage of it? As we come into tonight's 13th race on the season, the time for questions has now passed, and we get our answers. Coming up next on RaceSpot TV as the 2017 NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing, heads playoff bound from the Darlington Raceway. Just before we do so, though, let's look back 2 weeks ago with this week's iRacing race recap from Michigan, when we rounded out the regular season and got us to this point. Zach Novak is going to get set to get this the final race of the regular season underway. In 125 laps from now, we will know the 8 drivers who will make up the first ever playoff grid in this series history. Here we go as we get set to go racing in the Michigan 250 green flag for the 12th race of this 2017 NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series campaign. Pole sitter leads to turn 1.
And a great start from Zach Novak as they work themselves into corner number 1. This is an extraordinarily fast 2-mile oval, as this is probably one of the fastest tracks we're going to go to. That is not a super speedway, no restricted plates on these cars. As Ray already, Cody Bias looking to the inside of David Rattler as they're working down the backstretch for the first time.
Looks like problems on the front straightaway. A couple of drivers down into the grass. The 11 machine got loose coming out of turn 4. That's Davies slow in front of him. The 7 tried to check up low, got into him, and then got tagged from behind. Looks like Blake Reynolds didn't see him. Side by side for the race lead now at lap number 42. Zach Novak has controlled all the way under green. That will change. New race leader Michael Conti clears him in the corner. The 15 with a run. Thinking about the inside, but he will pull up to the back end as the 5 of Conti completes the pass for the race lead. A little bit spirited in the battle for the top spot as you see him get right to the bumper once more. He will look to the inside and dive down, so we'll go side by side once again. Just 3 laps after Conti completed the first pass for the race lead under green flag conditions. Novak aims to take it back. He is clear on the inside. Playoffs start in 2 weeks' time. First time ever at this top level of iRacing's Oval Series. And you're going to see that a mistake by Novak, though, as we look up front. He got way loose at a turn number 4, and that mistake is going to put Michael Conti to the race lead in the blink of an eye. And here comes Cody Bias to make a pass for second. Critical error by the 15. 40 laps to go in this race. We're now inside of 40 laps to go. That would be a long run to the end. So the drivers who have already pitted, I'm not sure they are inside of the window yet. If they are, it's going to be right on the number to get to the end of this thing. Maybe that's why we're seeing Conti resist pitting to this point, is because he's not at his number yet.
Novak goes well to the inside. Michael Conti sticks way onto the high side. And we're getting to that Michigan International Speedway we love. And here comes Zach Novak coming into pit lane.
So for the second time tonight, the driver of the number 5 machine is going to be short pitted, but the driver running behind him in second position. We will see if the 5 responds this time by, and he will. He's going to slow down, and now everybody coming over the radio and saying, hey, we're coming down pit road. It's going to put Logan Clampett to the race lead in the meantime. Big news in a battle for what was 5th position. Michael Conti has passed Zach Novak, and he did it handily. Surprised me. I would have thought a 1-lap difference wasn't going to be enough, but Conti looking just as good with 1-lap newer tires than the 15 did with 5-lap newer tires. Conti powered on by and is now 0.8 of a second in front of Novak in a battle that is technically for 3rd and 4th position on track, but it's going to become for the race lead. Look at the 5. The 04 and the 66 have yet to pit for a second time under green. Even if they can make it the next 27 laps, none of that matters because the Peak Ford is on the outside, and Michael Conti, trying to get a win tonight from Michigan, is going to go back to the race lead at lap number 98. Michael Conti, he came into tonight 12th in the championship standings and just outside of a fighting chance to race in this series' first ever playoff. But tonight, he gets back on the right track, and for the first time in 3 years, the Peak Ford is going to be heading to victory lane. Final time from Michigan International Speedway, checkered flag, Michael Conti, your winner. and let's talk to Tim about how this playoff grid will work going into 2 weeks' time. Everybody is reset now to 2,000 points for the drivers in the top 8. Ninth on the back will continue to fight amongst themselves. And we are given 3 bonus points for each trip to victory lane. So Ryan Luza is going to lead the playoffs going into Darlington with 209 points. Zelensky and Alfala, 2 wins apiece, going to get 2,006 points. Zach Novak, 1 win at 2,003. And then the final 4 names, Clampett, Challoner, Vincent Richardson, without any bonus points at 2,000. So that's how they'll look in 2 weeks' time. The road to $10,000 runs through the track deemed too tough to tame and into the postseason. Live tonight on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live. This is round number 13 and the opening race of the playoffs in this 2017 NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing. Happy to be with you this evening from Darlington, South Carolina, where we say good evening sim racing fans and welcome to tonight's Darlington Southern 250, which marks up the 13th race of the overall calendar. But as you have been anticipating, we finally get the playoffs underway at iRacing's top oval world championship level. We begin the road to Homestead tonight with the 8 names, 4 of which are not going to be with us in 3 weeks' time. And as we welcome you topside to the RaceSpot TV booth, myself, Evan Pasok, along with Andy Kessler and Randy Cheneth for the course of tonight's action. As always, downstairs is Hugo Louise, and you know, this race is fun, and it's going to be an exciting one, Andy, regardless of the exterior circumstances on where it falls on the calendar. A, because it's Darlington, it's a challenging track, which means that it's going to be a show for us up here, but also it's throwback night, so you're going to notice a lot of throwback paint schemes on the racetrack, and we'll try to beat out those as well as the night goes on. But you cannot ignore that the playoffs start tonight. We've been waiting for this since it was announced earlier on in the year, and we finally get to see how it'll shake out.
Yeah, it's exciting to see how this is going to shake out. 4 races to determine this season's championship. Of course, everything got mixed up now with the points. Everything's gotten aligned. The race wins. It's separated guys, not by much. It's basically a brand new season. 4 races to get it done. And like you said, what a tricky track to get it done, or get it started at, I should say. Darlington, up against the wall, both ends of the racetrack. It's tricky, and this is one of those places, Evan, that that wall can come out and bite you real quickly.
The Darlington stripe will be added to some of those throwback paint schemes as the night goes on. And Randy, the big thing is this is the first round of the playoffs. There are 4 races, 2 rounds. It's not an even split, though. 3 races going to make up this open round tonight at Darlington, Chicago, and then Dover. We have 8 drivers in the playoffs. If you win this week, next week, or the week after that, you are automatically going to be racing for a championship at Homestead. If you do not, you're going to have to race your way in on a point. And you'll notice as we talk about this championship, and we'll notice as the night goes on, race wins for the regular season have carried some bonus points over into this, which is why it's not a straight draw at the top. Your championship leader into tonight is Ryan Luza. He has the most wins out of anybody with 3. That will be a thing going into Homestead, but I think the math is clear. Don't worry about points. Put that car in victory lane, and everything else will take care of its own.
I think it's a really difficult sort of formula you have to put in your head when you look at the points here, you know, going forward to Homestead, because it's important to note, of the 8 drivers that got themselves into the chase, 4 of them did so without a win. So while 4 drivers, I think they can, you know, have the confidence in themselves to really push to put their car in victory lane. I think if you're Logan Clampett, maybe Challoner, Vincent, or Richardson, you might want to play it a little bit safe and run this for points at the same time.
Let's go top to bottom and talk about your RaceSpot TV starting grid. A lot of those chase names up front, they'll be recognized over the course of the race by those blue peak windshield banners on board, and their names also going to be appearing in blue anywhere on your screen. Zach Novak and Ryan Luza are going to make up row number 1. Ray Alfala and Bobby Zelensky row 2, and 3rd and 4th Top 4 on the racetrack, top 4 in the championship. Behind them, David Rattler's 5th with Matt Boosa in P6. You've got Blake Reynolds, Jimmy Mullis, Derek Bordeaux, and Chris Oberlin through P10.
10 through 20, you got 11 through 20, you got Clampett, you got Michael Conti, last week's winner, starting 12th, Jake Sturgis, Corey Vincent, Brian Blackford in the 15th spot, Mark Richardson, Andrew Fayash, Michael Johnson, and Nolan Scott, and Nick Ottinger rounding out your top 20.
Dylan Duvall, Chris Shearbert, Will Cooley, Brian Schoenberg, Brad Davies, Mitchell Hunt, PJ Sturgis, Brandon Schmidt, and Taylor Hurst with Joe Letterello in 30th. Rest of the screen going to go by up at top, and you'll be able to see how everybody's going to roll off for this one. But let's go playoff racing. For the first time in series history, we are green from Darlington for the opening round of this NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series playoffs, and it is Zach Novak to turn number 1 to get us underway. Darlington is a racetrack in which we're going to have a long night tonight with 183 laps on the board. It totals 250 miles come the end of it all, but this racetrack is very challenging. Andy mentioned drivers going to be dealing with the wall all night long. Randy, arguably this is a racetrack that you battle the track itself more than those drivers around you, and that is why we see single filing out very early on with a 15 out in front by a couple of car lengths.
I think we pretty much get single file all the way through this 43-car grid. The only side-by-side I saw this time by was between Brad Davies and Mitchell Hunt. They get themselves single file really quickly, and that's deep in your field. But all your guys up front, especially you guys racing for points, they get themselves relatively calm. They don't want to burn themselves out too early here, and they certainly don't want to get damage on that car in the opening lap. That said, Zach Novak already opening himself up a half-second lead here over Ryan Michael Luther, but your leader scrapes the wall through 1 and 2, so he gets himself a Darlington stripe early. Hopefully not serious damage on that number 15.
It'll happen at some point sooner or later. I'm sure you wouldn't like it to happen at lap number 3. It was just a little bit of contact for the 15 to Zach Novak. We'll see if it's going to bring Luza any closer, who continues to run second. Alfala still third. The only change up inside of the top 10 is for 9th position, and it's one of your championship competitors, Logan Clampett. Started in 11th. He's been able to pick up 2 spots, jumps up into 9th position very early on in this one. Other than that, no lead changes inside of the top 8.
Yeah, he was able to pick up a couple right off the start there, and he finds himself in a battle right now, actually. A couple cars right in front of him. Jimmy Mullis, got Blake Reynolds as well in that 66 machine as they worked their way off turn number 4 down the front straightaway. Logan Clampett wanting to make up some ground here. Of course, came into the chase, or this chase for the championship. No wins, so he has none of those bonus points. He's one of those drivers wanting to get a win, wanting himself guaranteed into that final in Homestead.
David Rattler is somebody who I feel we're going to be talking about a good amount over the course of the night. He runs in 5th position at the moment, and Matt Boosa trying to challenge him. Those two fighting for 5th and what would be the highest running non-playoff competing driver position on the racetrack. Again, there are 3 races, and there are 4 drivers who are going to be able to race in Homestead, Miami for this 2017 Peak title. That means if we see a playoff driver win every single week, there's going to be at least 1 spot in on points. The less individual race winners from there, the better it is for drivers to get on to wins. And as you see Boosa make a pass on Rattler for that position, it is up to these drivers, the non-playoff competing drivers, to play spoiler. We're not taking everybody else off of the racetrack and having only 8 drivers go at it. We have a 43-car field, and all the other drivers, excluding those 8, going to be just as important.
That's one of those things that when you talk about this championship, if you are someone like Zach Novak, Ryan Luza, Ray Alfala, Bobby Zielinski, obviously got quick cars underneath you tonight. If one of you can't get the win, maybe the one thing you want besides yourself getting a win is one of those other drivers who aren't in that chase coming away with one. That way you put the pressure on a lot of your other competitors. It's one of the greatest things probably, without locking yourself into the race, is to be the top finishing chase driver and have someone out on the outside who comes away with that race win. That allows you to put a lot of pressure on those other 7 drivers, knowing that you have that points buffer somewhat as you go into the next week out of Chicago.
And for those who were tuning in with us a little bit earlier on in the evening with the NASCAR Race Night Pro Invitational, happy that you're spending the rest of your evening with us here for the Darlington Raceway. Didn't get a chance to note it off at the top, but did kind of allude to it, that Ryan Luza is leading this championship. He runs in 3rd at the moment, and we'll break that down a little bit more for you. As we noted, if you win in this round, you get to go to the final race in the playoffs, but you don't get any bonus points. That race is going to be 4 drivers, no bonus points anywhere. Whoever finishes in front of the other 3 competitors walks away with the hardware, the check, and the ticket to NASCAR Championship weekend at the end of the month. but that's not how the regular season worked. We did not have a win and you're in, but the wins did count as a little bit of a bonus as you watch a battle for 11th position, and it's going to go in favor of Chris Overland. They ended up with 47 machine. He's trying to work his way up and continue onto the field, but Ryan Luza has 3 wins on the season, so everybody got reset to 2,000 points. He came into tonight with 2,009, 3 bonus points per win. Which means Ray Alfala and Bobby Zelensky, who had 2 wins apiece on the season, sit with 2,006 points at the moment. Zach Novak's 1 win has him at 2,003, and then the other 4 competitors, Clampett, Vincent, Challenger, and Richardson, all sit at 2,000. That win is so important, Andy, because if somebody like a Marcus Richardson were to win, Zach Novak, who's in at the moment, would then get dropped, kicked it down. So that goes back to the point that Randy was talking about, where if you can't win, you almost hope that your competitors don't, as we watch a championship driver and a non-championship driver fight for spots inside of the top 10. David Rattler going to lose a position. Corey Vincent in the 10 machine slotting through, picking up his 3rd spot tonight.
Yeah, watching basically all those guys. The number 9 of David Rattler actually falling back through the field over the course of the last 8 to 10 laps here. Started 5th. He's now currently in that 12th position. Still continuing to lose some, so maybe a setup difference, maybe a little bit into the wall. But I'll tell you what, one of those cars keeping an eye on right now is actually moving up through the field rather nicely, showing a lot of speed. Michael Conti in the number 5, our most recent winner 2 weeks ago at Michigan. He's making up some ground right now, and right now he's on the back bumper. Derek Bordeaux off too.
And you can't forget about that 5, as you were just noting. Just got back into NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series victory lane for Michigan International Speedway 2 weeks ago. The 5 team is feeling good. He's got a nice throwback paint scheme with that Peak 4 diffusion, and he is somebody who is not a part of this championship fight. Wasn't able to make the cut this year as he got off to a pretty slow start, and that the 5 team would like to have a better performance on this 2017 campaign than they did, but he can still play spoiler. There's 4 races up for grabs. Nobody's saying that all 4 of those races can't go to our non-championship drivers, and it's a good point when you think about it, because out of all the race winners that are in the playoffs, Luza, Alfala, Zelensky, and Novak, they account for what's a total of 8 different wins this season. That leaves 4 races with by non-chase competing drivers still out there in the field. So it's not like these top 8, while they have performed more consistently over the season after the qualifying simply based on points, does not mean that they're going to be able to walk over the competition.
And at the same time, if you're the likes of Logan Clampett, Christian Challenger, Corey Vincent, Marcus Richardson, one of the other things about is that you got into this chase without winning the race. That means you are 4 of the most consistent drivers in this series week in and week out. And even though it's just such a short sprint and that you need to get a win in order to be safe, having that ace up your sleeve of consistency, knowing that you can make it to the end of these races and you can consistently get good points at the end, I think that makes you very, very comfortable coming through this chase and understanding your situation, that you have a very good opportunity, if you have decent speed, to get yourself in a homestead in about a month and a half time.
Race still young, but we have been clean and green for now the opening 17 laps of contest. Did just see a driver down to the pit lane, though. The 7 Ryan Lowe came down, took 4 tires to the fuel. He's going to get the Dracontech Toyota back out on the racetrack, but that's going to put him at least 1 lap down. He may have fallen a 2nd lap down after running on the pit lane. It is a long pit road here at the Darlington Raceway, and if you've ever driven this racetrack on the service, been to this racetrack in real life for Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series event, or just seen it from a satellite image, you know that this racetrack is so difficult just based on the shape of it. And tonight's race length, clock it in at 250 miles. That's what we tend to see, Andy, week in and week out. 50% of what you'll see on the Cup side of things on Sundays, but that takes a little bit more laps at Darlington than it does at most places. This racetrack isn't quite a 1.5 miler. It comes in at 1.366 miles. So 183 laps around here is no stroll in the park. It is a long night. You got to be up on the wheel for every single one of those laps all night, or you could really find yourself in a world of hurt.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and we mentioned it before a few times now. You're going to be riding up against the wall both ends of the racetrack, so you got to be on the game. You got to be focused every single lap, and these races tend to have that feel too of a long green flag run. So a lot of these drivers, it's probably one of the toughest tracks to really stay focused for all 183 laps. So we'll see who can get it done here tonight. That lead, though, that was 1 second, Evan. Zach Novak, well, it's kind of shrunk here. It's within half a second now. You got Ryan Luza really starting to close in on Zach Novak.
He's been able to close that gap in fact, as you said, it may be 4 or 5 car lengths or so, but it is well within 1 second. They have been able to pull away from Real Falla. That driver still occupies third. He is working with some lap traffic at the moment. Maybe the lap traffic will give the 83 of Zelensky an opportunity to get up at him, but obviously keeping an eye on the race leaders up here, and already starting to see that rubber get worked in. You can see it really well when we went on board there with Zelensky the last time around the racetrack. That's a great shot of how that line enters into the corner low, goes right up against the fence in the center, and then kind of dives off as you get away and off of the turn. Turn 2, if anywhere tonight, it's going to be Calamity Corner. It's going to be turn number 2. These cars get so loose down at that end of the racetrack that if your car is not handling up to standards, that is not a fun place to be.
Need to have your cars dialed in at a track like Darlington here, Evan. If you don't, it's just, if you actually see your race leader, Zach Novak, a little bit loose off of corner number 2, so exactly as you say it, it strikes Zach Novak, and that allows Ryan Michael Luza to reel in just a little bit. Andy mentioned it, that gap was at one point out to about 5 to 6 tenths of a second. It's now within 0.25 seconds here as they come down your front straight in. I think it's well within 2 tenths now. Yes, it is, 1/10.5 as they go into 1 and 2. So Ryan Michael Luza looking hooked up in P number 2, looking to challenge for your lead. But all the while, you have Ryan Lowe. That is a lap car, but no damage, just fresh tires. And look at the difference tires make. This is going to make things interesting as your race leaders start to battle and lap traffic wants to cycle through.
And it's kind of a good case study for when we do see green flag pit stop cycle through for the entire group up front. Is obviously fresher tires going to be quicker. It is quite difficult to pass at Darlington, so kudos to everybody in that one for that 7 to be able to get on by. Ryan Lowe was running a lap down, as we noted. He is now going to get from 2 laps down to 1 lap down, so still feeling the effects of that very early but seemingly scheduled trip down to the pit lane. Again, it didn't appear that it had any damage. I don't know if he had any sort of outstanding penalty that would have showed up on our end of things, but just came down to the pit lane, got tires, and got fuel, put himself way behind, but it's a good way to show what the fresh tires mean. So what does Luza do? We can see that if you're faster by a lot, fresh tires tends to do the trick, that you can make a pass at the inside of the racetrack, but on even tires, what options does this one machine have? You don't want to throw it into the corner side by side. You're almost kind of hoping that a lap 25 and 183 lap event, that if the guy in front of you sees you're quicker, it might let you go. The one is starting to get impatient, though. Look to the inside. That time in 3 doesn't bite quite yet.
Yeah, it's a tough place to make a passes on the entry of the corner. You really got to time it and get it off the corner down the straightaway. You want to hope to clear them before you get to these corners, even one into turn number 1 as well.
Just trying to scan through the field to see if anybody else is having some big issues early, or maybe some big gains. There was not all that long ago in this race, we were talking about how the top 8 in this thing had not really changed out positions all that much. That is no longer true. Blake Reynolds has been making a mark towards the front, the number 66 Ford. He's been able to work his way up into the number 5 spot, and also Logan Clampett is able to get another spot that time by. He just passed Matt Busa for 7th position, and Busa in a good fight right now. The number 34 under attack by the 40, and there's contact. Mullen sideways at a 2, so is Busa. They'll go 3 wide. Everybody's going to be able to hang on, and Michael Conti through the middle just stole 3 positions at once.
Exactly what you're talking about, Evan, why you don't always want to go side by side here, because as they came off corner number 2, track just gets really narrow. It's almost like a bottleneck as you come off these corners, and just that little bit of contact, and that sent Jimmy Mullis sideways. Fantastic driving by that number 40 machine of Jimmy Mullis to keep that thing going straight and not put it in the wall and keep us green here. That's exactly what happens here, as we're still watching this race lead, and Ryan Michael Luza harassing the mirrors of Zach Novak. I think that Luza smells some blood in the water, because Novak's been getting loose a handful of times here. Luza's going to look to the inside and 1 and 2, and he's going to make it. Pulls up to the quarter panel, but has to pull out of it. Maybe a little bit of contact there. But I think Luza sees the fact that Novak is struggling and really trying to work those rear tires, and really maybe starting to kill those rear tires on that number 15 machine. I think Luza trying to force that 15 machine into a mistake.
If they were not leaning on each other, that's just about as close as you can get. And you have to think, if you're the 15th machine, Novak, he's very acutely aware that Luza's behind him. this is not necessarily a racetrack in which you want your priorities to be a little bit jumbled up and to take your focus away from what's going on up front. We do have a driver dropping down to the pit lane, and it is Matt Busa. Very early on at just lap number 29, the Gale Force Sim Racing Toyota is coming in as the battle for the race lead goes on once more. Lusa on the inside of the racetrack is going to be able to get it the last couple of laps. We could tell that the one was quicker. Once he got stuck behind the 15, he lost a half a second, and now a total going to be 0.8 of a second to the driver who was running in third, so we could tell that the 15 was holding the one up. Lusa clear for the race lead at lap number 30, and now we will see if he's able to pull away. It looks like he'll be able to.
Yeah, he's going to pull away about 3 or 4 or 5 car lengths now, working through 3 and 4. A little bit loose off of turn number 2, was 15 that time, and that's what allowed the 1 to really get the run. It looks like Novak loose still off of turn number 4 right there. You see him drop way down to the bottom of the racetrack, back up in the racing groove, and I think pit stops, green flag pit stops, already starting to occur here on lap number 30. We saw the number 34, Matt Busa. He came down pit road. See a couple other drivers as well making their first round of green flag pit stops. And we have to note too as well, as we see a couple more drivers down on the apron, this is one of probably the hardest pit road entries to nail down. It comes up on you very, very quick. Caution though out on the speedway.
You never want to caution in the middle of pit stops, and that's what we've gotten. Yellow flag flies at lap number 32, and it is issues with the Peak Blue Dash Chevrolet of Josh Berry, and it was not unassisted. We'll take a second look at a RaceSpot TV replay. It looks like he and Ryan Lowe going into turn number 1, they were battling for what appeared to be 38th position on the racetrack.
Ryan was a lap down.
Just recently gotten themselves back off of the pit lane in the case of the 7 Lowe, and I don't know if the fresh tires was that big of a difference, but he closed in very quickly on the back of the 8, and I think he was a little bit hesitant on if he was going to pass or not. Looked to the inside, that it pulled back up behind him, and he gets the 88 in that left rear quarter panel, Randy, and there was not a whole lot Barry could do. He held on to it for a long time. He didn't wreck it into the fence, so it could have been a lot worse, but it does go for a loop, but it brings out the yellow.
Yeah, I think Josh Berry not going to be too happy with that car already looking a little bit worse for wear, bit of damage on that right-hand side. Obviously, he's become friends with that wall a couple times here. But like you said, this is actually something similar to what we had happen last year in the same exact race. In the middle of green flag pit stops, we had some cautions come out, maybe lock some drivers a lap down, which is not the situation you want to see. But we can expect everyone down on pit lane here, probably taking 4 tires and fuel. But I think, the point Andy was making, he's absolutely right. This pit lane is just a complete handful to get down. You got to get the car slowed down off the apron and practically got to walk all the way through Mordor to get down to your box. It can be a bit of a pain under green flag conditions.
Cleaning it out for the driver of the number 1 machine, Zach Novak. Not the case. The 15 had to sit in the box for quite some time, and he's out of the box now, but he's pulled over on the left-hand side of pit road. So I don't know what's going on with the 15 at Novak, but he is going to go all the way to the back. Not what he wanted early on in this one after having a pretty good opening stint in this race, keeping himself up and inside of the top 5 after just losing a race lead. He is going to go way to the end of the line as Lusa, despite the fact that he wins the race off of the pit lane, thinking he may not have been able to retain the race lead, looks like he will be okay, and that's good news for him. Typically, you get a caution in the middle of pit stops, and it's the drivers out on the racetrack who have to come down to the pit lane, and then they find themselves in traffic. But because of the length of pit road, which kind of ties in with all that we've been talking about, Andy, everybody that pitted lost a lap. So we'll see Chandler Krizik get away by, we'll see Matt Busa get away by, and despite the fact that people had pitted before this yellow, Lusa is going to be able to maintain the race lead.
Yeah, he is. Everything's going to cycle out just enough for him here. I think there was just not too many cars out on the racetrack winning when it was time to pit. That when that caution came out, I should say, that is going to affect him. So Ryan Lusa will maintain that race lead. But we had mentioned one of the guys. I think that win a couple of weeks ago really sparked something out of the 5 camp there. Michael Conti doing a heck of a job here tonight. Currently around the top 5 there. So a good start for him coming up from the 12th spot.
And again, if you're just stepping in with us, you'll notice a lot of the front runners, in fact, have those blue Peak Antifreeze windshield banners on the front of their cars. Those are the drivers in the playoffs. Ryan Lusa, Ray Alfala, Bobby Zelensky, Zach Novak, Logan Clampett, Corey Vincent, Christian Chalater, and Marcus Richardson. You'll also be able to identify them in all of the on-screen stats at the top of your screen over the course of the race, because their names will be in blue. Those are the drivers competing for the championship. A win by any of those drivers in either of the next 3 races, including tonight, would buy themselves a ticket to the winner-take-all event a little bit later on this year at the Homestead Miami Speedway on October the 10th. So we do get through our first cycle of green flag, or the caution flag and green flag pit stops, I guess, a 50-50 split for both. We double things back up. Big winners in this: Logan Clampett up to 4th, Michael Conti up to 5th. We'll see what they can do on the restart.
Going to be interesting to see. I think those two are the ones to watch here. Both of those guys started on row number 6 in this field, and they've made huge headway, not only getting themselves into the top 10, but into the top 5 in just about 36 laps here at Darlington. That's not an easy feat, as Ryan Michaeluza is getting ready to bring him back to green flag racing.
His car going to drop down, and it happened very early at this Darlington Raceway. Part of how you get onto the pit lane, and field is going to be left in the hands of the driver who took over just before the yellow flag came out. Ryan Lewis going to take the green flag as we put 36 laps behind us and go back underway from the lady in the black. Single file, top 2, but a challenge coming for 3rd. Ray Alvala stays in front of Logan Clampett, as again everybody wants to find the spot in line before they get to the quarter. Side by side with Ottinger and Mullins going to figure itself out for 9th and 10th.
Yeah, it's going to be the only side-by-side battle currently in that top 10 right now, so they'll settle things out. They'll make it single file before they head down to turn number 3, so it's very quickly. You want to get single file, you want to get to that top side, you want to get the job done right there. See a little bit of a battle a little bit further back here, the 39 car, I should say. Michael G. Johnson there, stuck on the bottom side, a couple more positions there, but everybody now single file.
They chased down that one. Bashini's been able to open up a little bit of a fight. It looks like Zelensky Alfala may be dueling for 2nd and 3rd before we see a challenge for the race lead at all down the line. Just an update on your pole sitter, Zach Novak. After a very slow pit stop, he is scored in 36th position. He'll get 35th away from the 4 hill, a little bit deeper in the back, but it is going to be a long road to hoe for him if he wants to get back up and to be competitive in this event. Other than that, calm for the moment. The 5 of Conti wants to challenge for 4th position. Kind of contrary to what we see most races, the battles for position on track, Randy, kind of come a little bit of laps off of the green flag, 10-15 laps into a run when the tires start to wear, as opposed to right off of the restarts.
It's one of the things that you have to, when approaching Darlington, I think it's just one of the things you can often see in the setups at a racetrack like this, the fact that everyone's going to be building their cars a little bit different. Some people might think and expect we're going to get a lot of yellows at a track like this. A lot of people might expect us to stay green. I think that's what we saw from our top 2 early on. Ryan Michaeluza, I think, obviously built for the short run, whereas our pole sitter, Zach Novak, I think a little bit more for the short run. So those guys, you saw the way that Ryan Michaeluza was able to reel in Zach Novak late in the run, but the way Novak was able to stretch that lead early, that's going to be happening all the way up and down your field, and that's going to be even shuffled even more so compared to where everyone was running and where everyone came off pit road after that caution period.
Spot for position to the tail end of the top 10. Nick Ottinger pulls out of the way and gives Jimmy Mullis 9th position, so those 2 drivers going to swap things up. Not all as bad for the Ottinger camp. He's still halfway to the front from where he started, back in 20th position. Mullis trying to get back up to where he started, caught the fence that Tom Cetera 1 and 2. That one was a little bit more aggressive of a hit than he would have liked. You can get into the fence at Darlington. Nobody's saying that that's going to end your night, but you can't knock the wall down, and that was a pretty good hit down in turn number 1 and 2. We've got a little bit of discussion over the radio right now amongst a couple of the drivers up front, Lewis, Clampett, and some other drivers as well, chatting over the radio, trying to get out of each other's way and such, but so far no changes for position up inside of the top 5, and in fact, Lewis looks to be getting better as this run goes on. He's doubled up on that 0.3 of a second advantage off of the restart. It's now at 6 cents over Zelensky, who still has a mere full of the 2 forward.
Yeah, Ray Alfala hasn't let him get away at all here on this run. It's actually Logan Clampett falling back just a bit, maybe a little bit feeling the pressure of that 5 car there, as Michael Conti still holding on to that. It looks like Ryan Lusa going to be heading down pit road this time here. Not sure exactly what the reason of that is, but he just called it out. He's coming down pit road. That's going to put the lead now to Bobby Zielinski as they exit turn 4.
We saw a similar very short pit call in the opening stint of this race, and the one is going to give up the race lead. Again, this hurt the drivers who did it on that first stint. If it is voluntarily, we'll take a look to see if maybe this is a penalty for the driver of the number 1 machine. I'm not seeing any official penalty on the stat sheet here, but it may be the penalty for the restart. We'll have to wait and confirm if it's a drive-through penalty or if it is simply a stop-through, and he is going to drive through the pit lane. Just got confirmation that is a drive-through penalty for Ryan Luza. Changing lanes on the restart, that is what's going to cost him the lap and not some sort of crazy pit strategy. So he falls into the boat like Zach Novak. Even worse, those are your race leaders going to buy on the outside of the racetrack. He loses a lap.
That's disaster for that number 1 machine of Ryan Luza, because he was looking so strong out there out in front, and just that one little mistake when championships are on the line, those are not the sorts of mistakes you can make. So now for Ryan Luza, he really has to hope for a quick caution here, because he will be the one to take the wave around. So for this number 1 of Ryan Luza, this could be, if we get ourselves a long run here, pretty much day done.
Tough break for him. The longer this race goes green, it's going to hurt even more. When we did see drivers pit early in this one on a very short end of the strategy, what they did was they had fresh tires. They were able to get up and fight back through as we watch a fight for second. Conti on the inside of Alfala, unsuccessful that time. The tough break here for Luza is it was a drive-through penalty. Obviously didn't stop at a box, so he doesn't get fresh tires. So he's not going to be able to just drive around the 7 or so lead lap cars that have ended up in front of him and put him a lap down. So he is stuck there until he gets a caution flag. The longer this goes green, the worse off he is going to be. We thought Zach Novak was in a tricky situation. Your championship leader is currently being scored in 41st position in the opening race of the playoffs. So with the race leader now taken out of the equation, we bring our eyes back up to the top of the scoring pylon. Race lead is now assumed by Bobby Zelensky. He's had Ray Alfala aggressively on him over the course of this run. It had been for second. Now it's for the race lead, and it's getting a little bit more interesting because Conti wants to make it a three-way fight.
Yeah, Michael Conti was able to get around that 44 Logan Clampett a couple laps ago, and he's really closed that gap now on the top 2 as they work their way through 1 and 2. High, wide, and handsome up against that wall there. Pointed down, onto the back straightaway. Michael Conti definitely looking like one of the fastest race cars out here, one of the non-chasers. Come out of here, feel the wind.
Just keeping an eye on the drivers behind this race up front, assuming that Alfala may be a tad bit quicker in the 83 and can't get around him, and maybe if Conti may be just a tad bit quicker than those in front of him, then you'll start to see guys stack up. Again, the 83 and the 2 had a pretty good gap over Conti, a couple of car lengths off of the restart. So when you start to see a third car join the fight, and then maybe a fourth and a fifth, and you can see on some of the wider shots, while we are single file inside of the top 10, we're not all too spread out. You've got the top 8 drivers still within just 2 seconds of each other. That tells me that somebody may be holding up that line just in the slightest. And Darlington is a racetrack that is very frustrating to drive, and if somebody's making your night more difficult than it has to be, it might force you to make a little bit of a questionable call. So far, none of that. The night's still young, although we are starting to work our way into the middle portion of this race now at lap 52.
I think for the most part, just all the experienced drivers here are going to be trying to work themselves through this phase of the race and get themselves in a good point scoring position. You think about Bobby Zelensky and Ray Alfala, they just want to keep themselves out front, and then I think everyone else up and down the field, especially those chase contenders, are just trying to work their way through the field. As you have Corey Vincent still fighting with Derek Bordeaux as they come down the back straightaway. Bordeaux actually pulls out, not sure what's going on there with the 04 machine, but he pulls out, drops the position to Ryan Michael Luza, who's that lap down car, who's now going to be trying to work on number 10 of Corey Vincent. They come off corner number 4, very tight situation as the number 1 machine slips by on the outside line, but well done by Ryan Luza dealing with the slower traffic. He's trying to get himself back to the front of this field, potentially just get himself a lap back without a caution and just basically straight up.
He's running right now behind Logan Clampett, so as you look at it, it would appear that he's running in 5th position. Not the case, he is a lap down. Maybe a little bit quicker than Clampett because he was leading this race. He might be able to work his way up, but I would find it a little bit of a stretch if he'd be able to clear Clampett, Conti, Alfala, Zelensky, and get the lead lap back the old-fashioned way. The good news, if any, is he's the first driver 1 lap down. We've had a pretty clean race, rather, so far to this point. It appears that only Tyler Hill in the 9 has retired. Chandler Krisik's the only other driver 1 lap down. So if we were to see a yellow as the one gets around the 44 and gets a little bit closer to unlapping himself, if a yellow were to come out, he'd get the lucky dog and he'd get back to the lead lap. Now, he wouldn't have an opportunity to get through pit cycles like everybody else, and he would be way back in traffic. So obvious preference is to get back to the lead lap, then have the yellow come out while you're a lead lap car so you can pit with everybody else. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Luza has impressed us many a time, though, so far this season. Keep in mind, this is his first ever run in the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series, and he leads this series in points and wins.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job all season long. Leads, like you said, with the wins, couple of poles to his credit as well. He's pretty much been leading the points from the drop of the green flag at Daytona, so definitely one of those guys to keep an eye on. No doubt in my mind that he's one of those guys that you're going to have to contend with probably in Homestead and about 3 races or so. So he's got his work cut out for him, obviously, in this one to get himself a decent finish or even to get back up there to have an opportunity to win this one before it is over. The laps click by pretty quickly here, even though it's not a short track. They do carry some heavy speeds, and with the green flags, it's not what he needs to get back on the lead lap.
And there are racetracks in this series, places like Michigan, that give you a little bit of a wider racing groove that can lead to what you could call, I think, more exciting racing than a place like Darlington. Just look at the stats, you'll probably get more side-by-side and a couple of more passes. But I like tracks like Darlington, ironically enough, where you get a little bit more single file, but that's because, as we noted right off at the top, the track itself is the primary concern of the drivers as opposed to the guys around them. Now, tell that to Ray Alfala, who has not, for the life of him, been able to find a way around Zelensky. Same goes with Conti on the 2 in front of him. That's now basically a 4-way fight up front. And look at the 5. Moves over, lets the 1 car go. That's Luza a lap down, still with no tire advantage. He may be set to prove me wrong and get his lap back because he is fast.
Yeah, Reluza working his way through this field has been absolutely extraordinary. That just goes to show how much speed that number 1 machine has underneath it. If he can get a chance to get a lap back and maybe get a caution to reset this field and maybe start from the tail of the line, he's going to be through this field, I think, in about a 15-lap window till he's back up in the top 10. And you see him throw it up the inside on Ray Alfala, and he's already got that job done. So he's already basically essentially second amongst your front runners. He's just got to reel Bobby Zelensky back in. But to your point, Evan, I think you're absolutely right. Some tracks in this championship more difficult than others, and especially in the chase format, we have 2 of the most difficult tracks on the schedule of both here at Darlington as well as Dover in 2 weeks' time. You really only have that one somewhat comfortable track of Chicagoland splitting them. Probably from a championship standpoint, if you're someone who's got a chance at that $10,000 prize and getting yourself that championship at the end of the season, I think this might just be the absolute worst draw of tracks you could ever pray for.
And Chicago's not a bad place either, which will be the second one. But in typical NASCAR sense, you expect a schedule to be dominated by the 1.5-mile intermediate racetracks. And Darlington is about the same in size. Again, clock it in at just 1.366 miles overall. But it's definitely a track in its own as we watch Zelensky outside of the racetrack. Here comes the one to lose, trying to unlap himself, an incredible feat for a driver who had to come down pit road, didn't just pit and get fresh tires to lose a lap, had to serve a penalty. He has now moved himself to the to the lead lap and around dual race leader Zelensky. So if the yellow were to come out, he'd be on the lead lap. That's also good news for Chandler Krizik because he now kind of finds himself in the first car 1 lap down position. But this schedule is not one that is full of 1.5-mile racetrack. Chicago coming up in 2 weeks' time. It is absolutely a 1.5-mile racetrack, but it's a little bit different. It's got that curved back straightaway. It is one of my favorite 1.5-milers on the service. You've got Homestead at the end of the season. Sure, that is also technically 1.5 miles, but unlike every single other one, it is not a tri or a quad oval. You got a straight up run from 3 to 4, or rather from 1 to 2 and then from 4 to 1. That being said, very unique tracks, very niche tracks, I think, that kind of fall in this playoff. Good news for those who are good at those tracks, but for our championship hopefuls who may not be the best at a place like a Darlington or a Dover, you gotta step up and figure it out.
That said, I think there's not a lot of people in this chase that aren't good at tracks like Darlington or tracks like Dover. You look at our top two, you have Bobby Valensky and Ray Alfala, championship contenders. Then you go back to fourth, you have Logan Clampett, you got Corey Vincent in fifth. So for your top five championship contenders, then think about Ryan Michael Luza in the one and the speed he's showing. He's definitely the car to beat if he can get the track position back right now, the sort of speed he's carrying through that #1 Ford Fusion. So I think for the most part here, Evan, these championship contenders, they may not like these tricky tracks, but my lord, they are very, very good here tonight.
Yeah, they figured it out. Darlington incredibly clean so far to this point. Not all that far away, in fact, from the halfway point in tonight's Darlington Southern 250. And as we continue to work on our second green flag stretch on tonight, I want to remind you that this portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Peak Antifreeze and Coolant, the official antifreeze of NASCAR and a proud sponsor of the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing. So things up front have calmed down significantly. Alfala has fallen off into number 83, and he and Conti somewhat in a fight for second. That Peak Ford is a little bit off of the bumper, and just as I say that, he closes it back in, not to the point at which he's going to be able to make a challenge for position. But new faces up inside of the top 10. The likes of Corey Vincent, as we noted off of the restart, a big winner with that one. He's maintained running in fifth. Derek Bordeaux, though, may want to challenge him shortly. It has been a little bit of a learning curve, I will admit, through the opening 68 laps of this, but Randy trying to be able to pinpoint who's who and quickly glancing at a pack because of everybody having different colors on it. For tonight's the throwback night at Darlington. For those who are tuning in with us live, let us know who you think has the best throwback paint scheme as we continue to get a couple of good looks at these things as the night goes on.
It's one of the things that makes this event unique, isn't it? I'm super happy that for my Super Peak event, I get to work the throwback one for the second time in a row. Myself and Andy got to do the one last season as well at Darlington. And, you know, I love this track, and I love the theme that all the drivers have carried over from the real world of bringing all the throwback schemes. And, you know, there's not only throwback schemes from the real world, there's a couple that you've seen from the sim racing world as well. Logan Clampett running one of those. But one thing that's important to note, I think, Evan, we're starting to get to that situation where drivers were making green flag stops on our first long run of the night. It was about lap 34, 35 when we saw drivers start coming down on pit lane, and we've been green for that amount of time now. So I think we can expect drivers the next handful of laps, unless there's a fuel concern issue potentially, or drivers trying to get themselves to a fuel marker, we should be expecting some early takers here in the early goings. And as I say that, here comes 3-time, and here comes Conti as well, down on a pit road.
Tricky entry. Alfala locks it up. So does Michael Conti. I think they both were able to get it down to pit road speed of 45 miles an hour in time, but that was dicey for those drivers trying to get it lined up for the pit lane. Pit road also has a downhill incline as you head from turn 4 to turn 1. You got to keep an extra eye on that speed to make sure you do not go over. But second and third drop off to the pit lane. Zelensky so far has no intentions of dropping down. The 83 is going to stay out in front. For every lap he stays out, he's going to lose a significant amount of time compared to what we got just off of the last restart with brand new Goodyear rubber. We're running about 2.5 seconds slower per lap. That means you stay out an extra 2 laps, somebody on fresh tires is going to get 5 seconds on you. So I have to imagine the clock is ticking for Zelensky to get down.
Logan Clampett, Mitchell Schoenberg, we got Brian Schoenberg, as I'm messing my names up here. We got a few drivers as well coming down on the pit lane. Here comes Bobby Valensky for his pit stop. Another driver all sorts of sideways. That was Derek Bordeaux getting out down on a pit lane. Very, very tricky pit lane down here. I think the last time I saw drivers this loose, actually I don't think I've ever seen drivers this loose coming down on pit lane. That drop off the banking is super aggressive, and it's really messing with these guys. They try to get to these cars slowed down and on the pit lane.
The race lead going to now cycle through to Corey Vincent's hand. The number 10 now assumes the race lead in this one. He'll stay out for an extra couple of laps. This is a good opportunity for some drivers to be able to stay out and get a couple of bonus points, but also I think you're going to see strategy plays now. We were talking about the disadvantage of drivers who had pitted earlier on, and tends to be, in the grand scheme of things, if a race stays green, that the green flag and the short pit, if you will, Andy, is the call to go with. You get fresher tires quicker, and you get right back out on the racetrack. But again, the problem with that is if a yellow comes out, you get stuck a lap down often. So a lot of drivers from deeper in the pack stayed out here. The likes of PJ Sturgis from 27th. Joe Lottarello is just now pitting from 30th. Brad Davies from 25th continues to stay out. Challoner from 36th is now up to 9th. So these drivers trying to stretch the fuel as long as they can, hoping to actually get a caution flag that would help them out.
Yeah, you're even seeing guys like Zach Novak, who we saw have the problem stay on pit road, I think, to get damage fixed early on under that caution flag. He's still out there on the racetrack trying to hopefully get that caution flag. If they do that, they get the track positions. That's exactly what they need. They'll be able to come down under the caution flag to get that pit stop done. So that's why it's not a surprise to see a lot of these guys towards the back of the field still out on the racetrack. And we'll see what they can do and when they can finally come down. I know they got a lot of fuel. They can probably get about 70 or 80 laps, honestly, on a green flag run here. So we'll see exactly how long they decide to stay out.
Which means that the pit strategy call comes primarily for tires as opposed to coming down strictly for the needs of fuel. In Darlington, a racetrack with a little bit of an older surface, it's a little bit more abrasive when you're sliding up and down the lanes in the center of the corner. That the tire wear does get advanced a little bit quicker than some other places. Corey Vincent continues to lead this thing, and again, he is one of our championship competitors. Had a pretty good starting position in 14th, found himself at about the middle of the pack. Marcus Richardson in the 01 machine up to second. He's another championship competitor, so I think that it would be unfair to classify all of those who are staying out as drivers hoping to pick up time from the back, because you have championship competitors first and second taking quite the gamble.
And as you say that, Corey Vincent just smacked the wall in the middle 1 and 2, and he is really slow. You got 3 drivers, 3 wide down the back straight into 1 and 2, and that was who was that in the middle? Brandon Schmidt just splitting the gap between Chandler and Corey Vincent. So very close moments, and you see the pace differential of these new tires out here, Evan. That 10 machine currently logging laps in the 30s. Everyone else out there in the 28. So big risk taking tires this late on. Not taking tires this late on. But if you're Corey Vincent, you really want a yellow to fly and get yourself that track position, maybe increase your chances of coming away with a win tonight.
And if there is literally one scenario I, as a playoff driver, do not want to be in, it is being 3 wide with 2 lap cars fighting with each other for position and going into the corner at Darlington. That is just not good news. The 10 was able to maintain his line up top, and I think they got double filed out by the time they got to the corner, and then were single filed out in the center. But you can just see how much slower the 10 is compared to the 27. That 27 Tobias has not had a very good night. Started way back in 39th position. Is a faster car than that, though. Didn't take a time in the queue, but has already pitted, gotten fresher tires, and gotten back out onto the racetrack. So every single lap the 10 stays out, he's losing that gap you just saw get closed and then open it back up and then some. So where are the drivers that started out the trip down to the pit lane? Well, you find Ray Alfala in the 2 running in 10th position, just now back onto the lead lap. He and Conti 10th and 11th at the moment.
I think the big thing to take away here between Alfala and Conti is look at where they are in comparison to Zelensky. So right now you have Alfala and Conti basically nose to tail coming off corner number 4 down your front straightaway. Bobby Zelensky just is now coming off that 4th turn. So it's basically a straightaway, the distance of the front straight here at Darlington. That's the amount of time that number 83 of Bobby Zelensky lost staying out that extra handful of laps, Evan. And the thing to keep in mind is that even though he's going to have maybe a slight advantage on the new tires, Ray and Michael, they would have had, 2 seconds a lap for about 4 to 5 laps. We're going to be seeing Bobby Zelensky maybe have a 10th or 2 every lap, and he needs to hope for a long green flag run to even bring that gap back down.
They say that the longer you work under green flag conditions, the chances of a yellow start to drop ever so slightly as the run goes on. You get more people spread out. You figure you kind of get into a rhythm. That's something that is critical at a place like Darlington. But I just saw a lap ago the 2nd time in the last 5 laps that race leader Corey Vincent on old tires, and therefore a car that probably doesn't navigate the turns as well as he would like, get forced 3 wide. Not only is that an uncomfortable position because he's leading this race and is fighting for a championship, but just in general, when you're working on tires that are almost going to be 50 laps old, that is just not a fun position to be in. So it is these moments in the middle of a green flag cycle to pit stop, Sandy, that might actually be more inclined to bring out a yellow because you got so many different drivers working in and around each other, and this 10 is just trying to get out of the way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's actually going to pull off now off of turn number 3. He's going to make his way down to the pit lane now, so the number 10 here, Corey Vincent, will let a bunch of laps. Now he's going to come down pit road and get his service done to his machine as well here. So Corey Vincent, one of your championship contenders here, led some laps. We'll see what he can do with the fresh tires now.
Race leader is going to become the number 11 machine. Chris Overland in the 47 caught the fence a little bit harder than he would have liked, and you can see the damage on the right rear quarter panel for that machine. Got the wall in 1 and 2, and then got it again in 3 and 4. You're not necessarily going to completely destroy that car by getting into the fence like that, but as it continues to happen over the course of the night, unless you're really hoping to tighten the car up, I would advise against that. Davies very slow on the front straightaway. Your race leader just missed pit road, talking about how difficult it is to get down there. He made the commitment cone, but did not get it turned in time, had to bail out, and that's really going to sting.
Interesting to see if that comes with a penalty for the number 11, because as he said, he drove past the commitment cone, and he's now going to drop down onto the apron into 3 and 4 again, and that could be a night-ruining race for the 11 of Brad Davies as he gets it back slowed up and back down onto pit lane and at pit lane speed. So Brad Davies, after leading a handful of laps, has that unfortunate mistake, and that's going to really cost him. That said, Ryan Lowe currently scored as your race leader, just out in front by a short amount of Ray Alfala. And the thing to keep a note, Ryan Lowe still owes us a pit stop, and the likes of Alfala, Conti, and Zelensky, they might just catch up to the back of this guy before he's able to come down pit lane. But as I say that, he drops down onto the apron and begin his first second probably pit stop of the evening. So Ray Alfala, he will inherit the race lead, just about 2 or 3 tenths ahead of Michael Conti.
And I suspect that was the idea for the 7, is to wait for those drivers to get up to you and then come down to the pit lane. Try to eliminate a pit stop from your cycle entirely and try to work your way into the next cycle, as opposed to being viewed as the final pit stop. You pit right in front of the leaders. They might be thinking, all right, well, pit stops are going to happen shortly. We just have completed most, if not all now, the green flag pit stops for your race leaders. And it's been so long since Alfala was on pit road that he's already starting to think about when the next time he's going to be coming back down in it. But I think incredibly enough, during green flag pit stops, you tend to see a lot of separation amongst the battles for position. Alfala and Conti have stayed deadlocked to each other, still within a half a second of each other. They came down pit road 1-2 and run on the racetrack right now 1-2 as well. To see what the 5 machine can do. If anything, you have to look 3.8 seconds back to find Bobby Zelensky in 3rd. Logan Clampett was able to maintain 4th, and Derek Bordeaux up with an impressive P5.
Yeah, you can see exactly what Ray Alfala and Michael Conti were able to gain on Bobby Zelensky. By Zelensky staying out a couple extra laps, he lost about 4 seconds on this run. So you can just see the short pit, how well it works for some of these drivers. And for the 2 and the 5 right now, that is currently what it has done for them. You also got to think, like you mentioned, Evan, it's been a while. They've been out here for almost 20 laps now on this set of tires. And if things go the way the last run did, it wouldn't be too long to about 10 or 15 more laps, and you'll see these guys back on pit road for another round of green flag stops.
And right on that point, lap number 91 going to be complete as of this time by. We will take to the halfway point in tonight's Darlington Southern 250. So let's take this opportunity and take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service. iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the globe. And in the fast-paced world of eSports, iRacing is your one-stop shop for online racing, with officially sanctioned series by the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, and more. As we work lap number 92 from the track Too Tough to Tame, Ray Alfala has it under control control. He right now leads by 0.7 of a second over Michael Conti, who runs P2, the 5 team. Looking to maybe go back-to-back on 2017 winners from 2 weeks ago at Michigan. Bobby Zelensky 3rd, Logan DeClamp in 4th, and Derek Bordeaux at 5th. We just noted those positions. Nothing has changed in the last couple of laps. P6 right now is Chris Overland. The damage may be affecting him a little bit, though, as they got during the 05 closes in from 7th. Just behind them, you have the 42 at Dylan Duval, who runs in 8th position. Blake Reynolds is 9th, and Brian Schoenberg rounds out your top 10.
Starting or in that 11th spot currently. How about Brian Blackford from the 15th starting spot? 12th currently on the racetracks at 39 of Michael Johnson. Jake Sturgis runs 13th, right where he started. 14th right now on the racetrack. That's Nolan Scott in the 16th. Kenny Humpy has worked his way from 32nd to 15th here at the halfway point. 16th, Joel Lattarello, 30th place starter. Not bad of a run for him as well, too. Taylor Hurst right in that boat as well after starting 29th. He currently runs 17th. 18th goes to Casey Tucker. Will Cooley currently in the 19th spot. And running out your top 20, that's the 40 of Jimmy Mullis.
As we drop down outside of your top 20s, these are the drivers probably not having the night they would have wanted. But that said, Philip Diaz from 33rd up to 21st, so it's a decent run from him. Corey Vincent in 22nd. Ryan Michael Luza on the recovery drive, back on the lead lap and running in 23rd. Adam Gilliland in that 25th spot with Zach Novak, who just picked him on the live timing, up into 24th. Jake Nichols 26th, Timmy Hill 27th, 28th, Christian Challoner, Josh Berry 29th, and Brandon Schmidt rounds out your top 30.
And trickling down with the rest of the drivers that are scored 1 lap down. This includes all the way through 38th position that are 1 lap off of the guys up front. 31st is Marcus Richardson, Andrew Fash to 3rd, 32nd, Chris Sherburne 33rd, Brad Davies 34th, and Ryan Lowe is in 35th position. Byron Daly, PJ Sturgis, and Matt Busa through at 38th. 2 laps down and 39th is Cody Bias. Mitchell Hunt is 40th position with Chandler Krizik 41st. David Rattler 42nd. He runs 3 laps down, and all the way to the back, Tyler Hill still remains the only DNF tonight. That car is parked at the tail end in 43rd position. That's been a look top to bottom at your iRacing midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com and sign up today. For a limited time, if you go to iRacing.com/World of Outlaws, you can take advantage of some exclusive promo codes. You can get yourself on iRacing with a first-time subscription. You can either get a 1-year subscription for over 50% off, or if you just want to give it a little bit of a try, you can go 3 months for less than $5. That's a fantastic deal. It's valid on new iRacing memberships only, and you can access that at iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. So we transitioned back to the battle for the race lead, which is now not even close. It's been quadrupled since we checked in. Alfala 2.4 in front. We talk about in sports in general, I think, who was able to step it up and perform on the top level, and we didn't know what to expect coming into this playoff for the first time. And Ray Alfala has had a good season, and he has had success at this Darlington Raceway. He's the only driver in series history to have 2 wins here. He won back in 2014, and prior to that in 2012. The only other race winners here, old one-time winners. That includes Hudson in 2016, Landon Harrison in 2015, Nick Ottinger in 2013, Brad Wright 2011, and Josh Berry in the inaugural season in 2010. Well, Alfala appears to have gotten the memo that it is showtime. He is stepping it up here late, now with 100 laps complete.
Yeah, and he continues to grow that. He continues to grow that lead as well, too. 3.1 seconds now over Michael Conti. As the tires start to wear on this run, and these guys start to look for maybe that next green flag pit stop. It should be coming momentarily too for a lot of these drivers, but you'll see this green flag pit stop that we just had about 10 or 15 laps we completed it. It really separated the field, Evan. We got a lot of guys now. We had a big group of top 10 right within a couple seconds of each other. Now everybody's starting to really spread out over the course of this racetrack. Of course, some of these drivers having a couple opportunities now to make adjustments on that race car as well. It's definitely been able to step up the game for someone. Ray Alfala is included.
Couple of side-by-side fights, but in fact most of them are amongst drivers who are laps down. You are seeing drivers begin to cycle through the pit stops, and pit stop's going to be just on the horizon for the drivers up front. It can be difficult at times if you're keeping an eye on a specific driver, trying to root for somebody here tonight to keep track of them. But we have 40-plus drivers headed down to the pit lane, so again, not only can you take a look at the live scoring up at the top of your screen, but if you want to get a two-screen experience going, if you go to RaceSpot.tv/timing, you can follow along with tonight's NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series event from the Darlington Raceway with live timing online. Again, that's at RaceSpot.tv/timing. So who comes down pit road first? Is it going to be Conti to try to make up a 4.4-second disadvantage, or will it be Alfala to get out in front of this thing? All of a sudden, this race is past the halfway point and starting to work its way down to the end. As we keep an eye on a potential fight for second, here comes Bobby Zalenski picking up on a struggling Conti as this run continues to go on.
Conti in the 5 still has good speed, Evan. He's just been in absolute no man's land with lap traffic. A lot of those guys who took the late pit stops and are still out there putting down some rapidly quick times have caught your leaders whose tires are basically on their last legs, and we're going to be expecting guys probably in the next half dozen or so laps to come down pit lane. But due to all the traffic, Bobby Zalenski has reeled in Michael Conne's work down your back straightaway into 1, 3, and 4. They come, and here comes Michael. Early stop down on the pit lane this time as there's contact through 3 and 4. That was just a driver up in the wall, so we're going to stay green. But Michael Conne, first one to blink and come down on pit road, as well as Ray Alfala, your leader.
Top 2 come down pit road. Zalenski does not take the bait. He will stay out. He leads lap number 105, and will assume the race lead. Logan Clemp going to go up to second. Now Bordeaux, Duval, and Reynolds become your top 5. It is a gamble. Either way, you pit early, you do what you're supposed to do, you do the most strategically sound decision, and a yellow catches you out. You stay out, you try to bank on a yellow. Maybe if you're outside of the top 20, that's the best call for you. You don't get a yellow, you lose about 30 seconds just based on all that extra time you stay out on the racetrack. There is no perfect call in sim racing nor racing in general, but I like the decision by the top 2 to come down.
Yeah, they're definitely sticking to the books that they've done so far at the beginning of this race. You got to stick to it. Once you made that strategy, you got to stick to it. There's no way to change it now. The only way to be able to change any type of strategy would definitely be under the caution flag. So with that 35 lap run, here they go. 83 problems off of turn number 4. Looks like big problems there off turn number 4, but we stay green.
Lot of smoke, and it was Bobby Zalenski. He made contact coming onto pit road. We'll get a second look at this, what it's up now. 2 very different entries on the pit road. Josh Berry was very low, decided to dive to the apron in turn 3. The 83 decided to dive down in the corner, and Zalenski came down, made contact with Berry. Both of those drivers with damage, but no caution, and we stay green. That is a terrible situation for the driver, the number 83 machine, Bobby Zalenski, who came into tonight inside of the top 4, which would advance him to the next round of the playoffs. Now he cost himself about 20 seconds, and he may have to sit in the pit stall to get damage repaired.
I think there's likely going to be words between the crews of Bobby Zalenski and Josh Berry after this one, because Josh, I mean, he just went down to the apron, obviously looking to come down on a pit lane. About midway through, I think he decided to not come down on a pit road, and he started tracking back up towards the racetrack, or I'm not sure what that was, but I think Bobby Zalenski, given his championship contention where he sits, not going to be very happy about that, and rightfully so.
Yeah, most drivers have been pitting the way that the 83 was going to pit, Andy. Talking about, as you mentioned earlier tonight, how difficult it is to get onto the pit lane. That's how most drivers have been doing it. They enter the corner, and then they dive down. And it was tough to tell if the 88 had decided to pull back up, or if he was just struggling getting that car slowed down on his own right. But I think it was a different call by him to drive down pit road that early. But I think that in either situation, you have to know where the championship competitors are around you, and it's a race, 100% at the end of the day. But I feel like some consideration needs to be given to those fighting for a title.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Honestly, with the 88, I don't even know if he knew that Zalenski was coming down. You know, and I really think that from what I saw, the view I saw, it really looked like the 88 was just having problems with the older tires, and you're on that flat surface on the apron. it's real tough, like I said earlier, to get onto pit road here at this racetrack. There is different ways to enter entry turn 3, like you see the 41 of Jake Sturgis doing when he missed the pit lane, and then it was so hard for him to even get on there. So it's just one of those pit roads, and there's different ways to do it. Not sure exactly who we can really blame on that one, but you definitely have to say the spotters maybe should have been more involved with that, letting each driver know where the other cars were.
Well, you saw the replay of Sturgis, who also missed the pit road entry, a driver who fought for this championship. It was in a heated battle for the title no more than 365 days ago with Ray Alfala on the 2016 campaign. He becomes at least the second driver that we've caught with the cameras missing the pit road entry. That one was almost identical to what we saw with the driver missing it on the first cycle, a green flag service. And as we run now, no, it's not an arrow at the time, and it's scoring only 10 drivers are being scored on the lead lap. Ray Alfala in 9th, Michael Conti in 10th are the only lead lap cars at the moment that have pitted. So at least the top 8 have still yet to come down for a second pit stop on this green flag cycle, which has gone now almost 80 some odd laps.
One of the drivers who's really lost out of those early stoppers through this last round of pit stops is that 5 of Michael Conti. We saw him come down very close to the 2 of Ray Alfala, and that gap is currently out to 5 seconds on the racetrack. Math, not my strongest suit here, but what was about a 1 or so second gap when the pit stop started, now out to 5. So the 5 of Conti maybe having some issues on pit lane, maybe taking some repairs. He's dropped back quite a bit as your 10 of Corey Vincent continues to lead the way. And Zach Novak has gotten himself back into position number 2.
There are a lot of drivers a lap down right now through 34th position, to where if a yellow were to come out, it would be bad news for them. Corey Vincent, though, again, Zach Novak at number 15 to Bashid. We saw them do this very similar strategy on the first stint, stay out, and kind of difficult to track if it hurt them or not, because we noticed that once they've jumped back up to P1 and 2, this strategy, though, the first cycle, they did the same thing, stayed up for a while. They ended up at about the mid-20s by the time they had pitted and had gotten back out onto the racetrack. Now, you do have an advantage on tires once you pit, because you'll have fresher tires than everybody who had pitted earlier and has, at that point, 10, 15 lap-old tires. But Corey Vincent, Zach Novak may be shooting for a Hail Mary in this one, trying to get something. And for Zach Novak, who started on pole, if it was not for that mistake on the pit lane in which he sat into the box for some extra time, don't know if it was simply to get some damage repaired, but then he pulled out of the pit box and stayed on the left side of pit road. He did not blend out immediately, fell from up front to about 37th position on the racetrack. So he kind of forced himself into this strategy. Was not the plan, I would imagine, when the green flag dropped.
No, it definitely wasn't a plan, but you know, you got to play it out as it unfolds. And I think right now, for Zach Novak, this is exactly what he's got to do to get back up there and hopefully get that track position. Just hope that a caution comes out and he can catch these guys out there on these long runs, and we'll see exactly how it'll all play out when it comes down to it. You might even see these guys that are out there now play it up with one more stop, where the other guys are going to have to make 2 more stops before this thing's all said and done. So strategy is definitely in play here, as long as we stay at green flag racing.
That would be the perfect scenario for the Vincents and Novaks of the world, if they're going to be able to make this thing maybe within one more pit stop, if they can continue to stretch it. Fuel's definitely plausible, but just how far are you willing to go on tires? 20 laps extra on a run has not been out of the question. Are you willing to do 30 to be able to maybe eliminate a pit stop? But even in that case, which is if you're really committed to this strategy, you're not just staying out banking on a yellow, and you really want to make this call to take a pit stop out of your cycle, then the thing that you cannot have is the guys who have already pitted catching you. And Ray Alfala is only 11 seconds off the bumper of Vincent. Keep in mind that Alfala has pitted one more time than the 10 has on this run. So even if they could, I'm not sure, Randy, that's going to get the job done, because the drivers sticking with the straight and narrow, coming in on their numbers, getting the tires, are just that much faster that sure, you might be able to eliminate 40 seconds for having to come down and pit, but if you're overall 40 seconds slower in doing so, it does you no good.
I think the thing to keep in mind though here is of your race leaders who are, like you say, keeping it on the straight and narrow, we're going to expect them to come down onto pit lane likely 2 more times, whereas if you're Corey Vincent, Zach Novak, you're probably targeting only 1 more pit stop, so you're cutting out a full stop down onto pit lane, and that is a considerable advantage to have here at a track like Darlington. Right now you'll need to try to run about 15 or so more laps to try to get that last run to a relatively reasonable number. For the most part, we've seen your front runners doing about 30 to 33 laps out here before they come down onto pit lane. Corey Vincent's been out there a little bit longer than that. Came in lap number 84. He came out on lap number 85. Currently logging lap number 119. So he's already at 35 laps scored complete right here. If he can just make this last maybe another 10 laps or so, he might just be able to put himself into a dark horse position and get it done on 1 more stop.
And also something to note through this cycle of pit service is that, Ray Alfala obviously continues to march his way back up to the front of the field. He's up to 3rd position now, and we'll be closing in on Zach Novak momentarily. Novak just kissed the fence that time, off in quarters 3 to 4, your current 2nd place runner on the racetrack. Michael Conti has been the 2nd place runner to Alfala, though, for the bulk of this stint. And he still continues to chase the 2 up to the field, but that gap has grown significantly. I noted after that first cycle of green flag pit stops earlier this run that despite the fact that you would expect people to separate, they did an exceptional job. I guess Ray Alfala really wasn't planning on it, so Conti did an exceptional job of keeping with the 2, staying within a couple of car lengths of him. Not the case anymore. Alfala at the start-finish line, Conti still coming out of turn number 4. Those 2 cars have definitely separated on this last cycle.
Yeah, they definitely have. Michael Conti has just fallen off there. Maybe some adjustment by Ray Alfala. Maybe just a little better pit stops. Entry and exits and pit stops make huge difference at these racetracks as well. We've mentioned a couple of times the different entries these guys have, entering off of turn number 3, coming in about the middle of the corner. So a lot can dictate really how quickly or how much time you can gain or how much time you can actually lose.
Checking in with the one of Ryan Luza, who had to come down to the pit lane and serve a pass-through penalty earlier in this race while leading. He's not happy on the radio with the likes of, I believe it was Bobby Zelensky, who he was having a discussion with. At least both of those drivers queued up at the same time, although a couple of drivers still chatted it out. The one was not happy with somebody. Just wanted to update you on the driver who came into tonight as your championship leader. 100 laps ago was in a position leading this race and feeling good about life. It's not as bad as it was. He has been able to make up some gap, but it's still 21st on the racetrack. Not what he wants in a points night. Good news is he's still got about 60 laps in this thing to continue to make up points here and there, but this is going to be one that team is definitely going to want to not remember going forwards.
I think for Ryan Michael Luza, I think the biggest shocker is the fact that this race has been so clean. Only been 1 caution all night long tonight, and well, that on that restart, that's when he got himself that penalty. He had to come down onto pit lane. That one I still believe is the quickest car out there on the racetrack. But the other car, as you said, that's having a frustrating night. Another championship contender, that 83 of Bobby Zelensky. 2 cars that were actually about to have close on the racetrack fighting for position. 1 point leading this race. Both of them find themselves in the same part of the field at the same time with about 60 laps to go.
About to see a battle for the race lead. It's not much of one. The 10 of Vincent does not have many weapons at his disposal to hold off a quick Ray Alfala, but here it is nonetheless. The 2 car going to come off at turn number 2, traced by the 57. That is not for position, but the battle between the 10 and the 2 is. And here comes Alfala having pitted and the 10 having not. Continues to stay out. That's the difference between good and bad tires. And Ray Alfala going to go back to the race lead with lap number 130 in the works with 53 to go. It might be a bit of a stretch for Alfala to be able to make it to the end of this on 1 stop, but that may have to be the strategy call for them.
It may just be that. I mean, we're about 53 laps or so from the end of this one here, so I think Corey Vincent staying out a little bit longer than the last run. He's probably trying to close that gap down, that when he comes in, because he will short pit before Ray Alfala here in Alfala's final run. So maybe he's hoping that he will, when he does come out, if he has that advantage on Alfala, he's got a little bit better of tires and he might be able to hold him off. So strategy definitely in play here, and I guarantee these guys are crunching some numbers up on the pit boxes.
And we know that 56 laps to go is a feasible number. You can get that on fuel, no doubt. It would be a little bit longer than what Alfala's been doing tonight, but I think that the 2 is going to make this on one stop. I don't think there's any strategy in which you want to pit twice and do 2 25-lap sprints to the end when you're trying to defend the race lead. So for Corey Vincent, and this ties back and Randy with what we were talking about earlier, you have successfully taken a pit stop out of your strategy. Because now both you and Ray Alfala, in theory, are going to pit one more time to get to the end of this race, although Alfala has pitted one more time than you so far tonight. So on the stat sheet, you knocked out a pit stop. It's a win. The problem is still not quick enough. Alfala was able to pit and get back in front of you. So at the end of the day, the strategy does not work out. Now, it's not all a loss because he's running in second position. So it could work out in the end, may not be a race-winning move, as we see Michael Conti in the 5 catch up to the 10. He'll go to the inside of the racetrack and handily take over that position. Not the end of the world for the 10 of Vincent, but it's not going to be a race-winning call.
I think you're counting your chickens before they hatch here, Evan, because I think we're going to expect both of these cars down onto pit lane very soon. They're likely going to pit within a similar window. And the thing to keep in mind is that Corey Vincent, he knows what his car can do on longer runs, pushing 50 laps on these tires. If you're Ray Alfala, you've been hanging out in that 30 to 35 lap window all race long, and you have to then make the decision of, do you try to risk it and push it 50 or so laps to the end, or do you decide to just keep on your strategy and come down pit lane? If you're Corey Vincent, the choice is obvious. You're going to basically stay out 100%. Right? I think if you're Ray Alfala, it's going to be very, very questionable. And I think Corey Vincent has a better chance than I think you might be giving right now.
He's already pitted, and that's what we expect. We saw that earlier tonight once Ray Alfala caught up to him. The second your, I guess, would-be race leaders and the drivers at the time who were second and third, Alfala and Conti, but once they caught up to those drivers who had stayed out, they pitted. That's really the only option they have. And again, it's kind of a way of getting yourself onto the same pit strategy as them, as opposed to being considered at the end of the last stint. And he comes down pit road, he'll be good to go to the end. He's going to get out on the racetrack right now and have the benefit of fresh tires. But the tires really start to fall off, Andy. We've been talking about that drivers are pitting here for tires, not for fuel. So those tires are going to be good for the 10, but only for so long. And I think that Alfala's going to stay out, stick with his numbers, come down pit road, and then he will have the fresh tires on a more realistic sprint to the end, when Vincent's tires have nothing left. And I don't think limping home to the end is going to be quick enough to hold off the 2. That remains to be seen. Just remember, 2 cars getting together can completely change all of this, but we do have to follow that 10. It's quite the gamble. He falls to 1 lap down in 32nd, but he is set to the end of this race.
Yeah, and you're talking about a couple cars making contact. How about what's going on in front of Ray Alfala between some lap cars right now? 3 of them lined up nose to tail. It's all being led by that number 22 machine now as they exit turn number 4. You got the 94, you got the 57 of Sturgis as well involved in that too. These guys are all racing hard for every single position they possibly can. It doesn't matter where they are in the stands. Oh, right there in the 2, trouble in turn number 1, able to hang on to it, trying to stay out of the way. And he's gonna do just that as he gets that all collected right there off of turn number 2. But right there, right in front of your race leader, that could have changed everything.
And Brian Blackford in that 22 also up into the fence, so the caution very close to coming out. If one of those cars had just snapped itself all the way around, it does not, and we stay green from the Darlington Raceway. The middle portion of this race as we continue on, brought to you by Herculiner Truck Bedliners, the official bedliner of NASCAR. Michael Conti is second. That's been the case for the better part of this race after we got to lap number 50 or so, but that gap has grown. Alfala has opened it up from 4/10 after the last green flag cycle to 4 seconds on this one. So amongst his peers, the drivers on the same cycle as him, Logan Clapp at 3rd, 11 seconds back. Garrett Bordeaux, 13 seconds back. And Blake Reynolds at 5th at 15 seconds back. There's no contest for the 2 unless he makes a mistake. So the only thing that Alfala has to worry about now is if that 10 can pull the rabbit out of the hat on that strategy call.
Also, keep in mind, we could see the 5 of Michael Conti come down onto pit lane and really shortstop here as well. He's only 4 seconds back from Ray Alfala, and we've seen 4-second gaps get stretched out on the shortstops here tonight at Darlington. So Michael, even though he's a bit ways back right now, I think he could potentially bring that back with a strategy call. But does he have the pace, if he were to do so, to keep up with that 2 of Ray Alfala? That's the question you're definitely going to have to be asking, as we're probably going to be expecting to see these front runners drop themselves on a pit lane here in the next 2 or 3 laps. I've been expecting them pretty much any time now. So I think if we're going to see anyone short stop, they should be coming down very, very soon.
More drivers down pit road. Nick Ottinger is into the pits this time. Byron Daly also down pit road. The 7-seater Ryan Lowe is pitted as well. We wait to see the names up front come down to the pit lane, and all it takes is talking about the tire fall off. The fastest lap tonight for Michael Conti, who runs in second, was on the second lap.
Oh, we got a spinner down the back straight. Spinner, Josh Berry.
Caution, there it is. Second time tonight that Josh Berry has been in an issue, and this one is going to bring out the caution flag at lap number 137. Got checked up at a turn 2. You'll see it on the second look. The 39 lifts. Berry does as well. Not enough time for the 11 of Brad Davies to check it up. And the 88 machine gets turned at a turn number 2, and we have a caution flag at lap 137.
Yeah, and talk about changing everything. I guess I'd say Ray Alfalla, Michael Conti, good thing they stayed out. Look at the one car, Ryan Luza, still out there in 8th right now currently. That's going to help him out a lot as well, too. So I'll tell you what, for some of these guys, it's probably a good thing it came out when it did. For other guys like the 10, the Corey Vincent, who was hoping this thing went out green the whole way, this is going to hurt.
Vincent is going to be scored 22nd at a lap down. This is huge, though, kid you not, for Ryan Luza, who using pit strategy had stayed out, still needed to come down to the pit lane, but was running in 8th position. He has an actual opportunity in this race to get a top 5, if not challenge for the win. He will pit from inside of the top 10. The good news for Alfalla is it should be very easy for him to get down and out of the pit lane uncontested, because these drivers dove down to the pit lane. There was still quite a big gap, 2 seconds between Alfalla and Conti. So they'll head down to the pit boxes. The two expected to go with 4 tires at fuel. This will be good enough for everybody pitting now to be able to make it to the end of this race. Tires might be a little bit stretched come the end of it, but there is no doubt that you can make it to lap total distance that number 183, and Alfalla very easy in and out, clean pit stop, wins the race off of pit road. Conti going to be right there with him in P2. The yellow allows him to race away that 4-second disadvantage.
The number of lap cars that were separating all our drivers on the lead lap. The race off pit road going to be pretty boring this time through. Big gaps for all your drivers. It's basically going to be as they came onto pit road is the order they're going to come off. But I think the big talking point here is that one of Ryan Michael Luza. After that early penalty, getting that drive through, going to the back of the field, he finally gets himself back on cycle, going to be restarting inside of your top 10, and we saw how fast that number 1 machine was tonight, Evan. I think Ryan Michael Luza might just be able to pull this off from the 4th row on this restart.
It would be quite the feat for him, because not all that long ago I said that this may be a race that team wants to erase and forget about. A lot of determination, not giving up. For many drivers, you get a penalty, you get stuck a lap down, and then you get an insanely long green flag run that is unconventional, that associated with that kind of a racetrack. It's very easy to beat yourself up. But Luza, again, rookie in this series, but a veteran on the iRacing service, was able to work through it, use strategy. Lucky Yellow may not have heard it, but he is now in a position where on the outside of row 2, he has an actual fighting chance to be competitive in this one, and that's not what the likes of Alfalla and Clampett and some of these other drivers wanted to see. Not that you're ever actively rooting against your fellow playoff contenders, Andy, but if somebody around you, say at the top of the championship standings, has a problem, you're not necessarily going to really cheer for him to get back up there. So this could have been a big night for those drivers to get up and in front of him, and instead, Luza just not going to roll over.
No, he's not. And who says you're not rooting for your competitors you're going
maybe
for?
Maybe quietly.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe very quietly in the car, Alfalla was going, all right, he's got problems. He's in the back all night. Now he's second guessing and saying the same thing. All right, now he's in 8th. Let's see what he can do. So, listen, it doesn't matter. If Ray Alfalla can stick where he is, continue to do what he's done the second half of this race, and pulls out a win, it doesn't matter where Ryan Luza finishes. He knows he's in that championship race down at Homestead. So, honestly, the only thing on the mind of the two is just to get out in front and stay there the rest of this race.
And that is the single biggest takeaway, is it was not like that in the regular season. So Luza sits at the top of the championship standings into tonight because of the bonus points. But through the regular season, we have drivers who won races this year that are not racing for a championship. But we have Logan Clampett, Corey Vincent, Christian Challoner, and Marcus Richardson, who have no wins. And in fact, Richardson, no top 5s all season. but they points their way in. They played the system correctly, and they did what they had to do. And they have earned that right to fight for a championship. But it is all different tonight, in 2 weeks' time, and in 4 weeks' time when we close out the round, because a win puts you into the championship, and you can kick your feet up the next 2 weeks and watch everybody else get at each other's throats. Second to caution, going to go behind us, and Ray Alfala wastes absolutely no time. Is it the final restart with less than 40 laps to go?
Ray Alfala doing exactly what he needs here to getting himself an early gap here over the likes of Michael Conti and Logan Clampett here as the entire field goes roaring off down into 1 and 2. Now at the start and at the first restart, we saw the entirety of the field play nice and get themselves single file relatively quickly. Here inside of 40 laps to go, Evan, I don't think the same is going to ring true. We already have early side-by-side action. Blake Reynolds on the inside of Dylan Duvall. That's going to be for 6th place on the racetrack, and Duvall gets the advantage up high.
And at this point, there is no rolling over, just trying to get a solid finish in this one, trying to get a spot in line. If you're up inside of the top 10, you're going for it. There was a lot of side-by-side action, single file most of it out, 2 laps off for the restart. In fact, everybody inside of the top 10, single file for the moment. It's Alfala, Conti 1-2, with Clampett and Bordeaux 3rd and 4th position. How about Brian Schoenberg in the Pro Geek Ford? Fantastic run tonight. Digs himself at a starting in the middle of the pack. He runs at a 5th position.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was just going to mention him starting 24th, currently in that top 5. And he's got a fast race car as well, too. Been working with Michael Conti over the past few weeks as well, too. And we saw how fast that car, the 5 car, was 2 weeks ago at Michigan. Got the win there. And how about tonight? All over the back bumper, Ray Alfala here, and what could have been the final restart of the night. So Michael Conti not wanting to let him go. Schoenberg right there as well in the top 5. It's a good showing from both of those cars.
And the bulk of the conversation for the good part of this race, and now a penalty is going to be issued to Brad Davies. And we're able to check this one. It's going to be a drive-through penalty for Brad Davies, who was at the time scored in 22nd position. A drive through the pit lane. He'll get back out there. He's asking for clarification on the penalty. That's going to take him out of any late race hope he had in competing for a solid finish in this one. But what we've been talking about for the last hour has been pit strategy. Does taking a stop out of it work? How far are you willing to go on the tires? Doesn't matter how far you're willing to go. You are going to the end of this thing. If we get a yellow, maybe somebody will be thinking about coming down, getting 2 or 4 tires for a restart. But if we stay green, there is no reason, aside from a penalty and race control telling you that you have to, for you to go down pit road. So do Alfala and Conti go at it right now? Is the 5 digging? Is Alfala saving the tires for what would be a little bit of a long run compared to what we've seen tonight to the end of this thing? These things we don't know. What I can tell you is it's a great battle for the race lead, and it's about a car length and a half between the two of them.
Conti doing a great job to reel in that 2 machine and put a lot of pressure on 3 time as they go rolling off into 3 and 4 for the 152nd time tonight at Darlington. And on Lose the Watch still right now, someone we have to keep an eye on. He's currently running 7th, just behind the 42 of Dylan Duvall down the front straightaway. And it's important to remember here that number 1 of Ryan Luza, as quick as he has been best on the long runs tonight. We saw at the opening run when he got the race lead that he basically did it after about 10-15 laps were in the books, and then again about 10 or 15 laps into that second run as he was in beginning to unlap himself. Ryan Michael Luza, that number 1 machine, really came alive. So right now I think Ryan Luza gonna struggle to pick up some early spots, but I think once we get about about 10 to 15 laps into this run, I think we're gonna see that number 1 really come alive. Look for around lap 160 to watch him really start to move up the field as he puts the pressure on Duvall off of 2.
And he gets to the back of the 42. You're exactly right in that consensus. He took a penalty, and he was still out there on the same tires as everybody else and drove from what would have been, if it was 4th position, from 5th to the race lead in about 20 laps. Nobody else had that kind of pace on a long run. Now it is 4th position. Lose it to the inside on Duvall. The 42 is not going to fight him for it. Eases up just the slightest bit to let the one clear him into the corner. Drops back down in line, and Ryan Luza now plus 2 positions off of the restart, back into 6th spot.
Yeah, he's got a lot of work to go here. Still about a second between him and Brian Schoenberg for what would be the 5th spot. Still 2.4 back, though, off the race lead. Ray Alfala, he's got that 5 car all over his back bumper. All these guys, top 3, still within a second of each other here in the opening laps of this run. So I definitely like that 5 car. Obviously, in a little bit of a draft, does come into play a little bit here at this racetrack. Still got to have a car that handles through the corners. The 5, Michael Conti, looking to make it back-to-back weeks.
And they're running a little bit of a different line. You can see that 5 a lot higher up the racetrack. You would think it's a little bit more of an aggressive line. The time I guess you can limit getting right up against the fence, it would be better off because you're always just a little bit of a step away from overstepping that line, getting into the fence and losing a lot of time. But Alfala taking the bottom, maybe just a more conservative line, defending with the clean air, not having to deal with the tight race car being tucked up behind somebody, or the 2 just drives better. But you can very clearly see at this end of the racetrack, the 5 right up next to the fence, the 2 right down on the white line, and it's tough to say if an advantage is going to either or because they remain locked at about 4 car lengths apart.
You talk about it being tough, Evan, to pick out if there's an advantage between the top side and the low side. Last lap, number 157 for Ray Alfala, 28.325. For Michael Conti, at 28.325. So very, very close between the 2 of them right now. You see Michael Conti maybe opting for that bottom groove through 3 and 4 this time. Let's see what happens if it ends up being a little bit quicker for him or not. But these 2 seem to be very evenly matched as they come across the stripe right now.
And if they start to fight, do not exclude or forget about the driver's third on back. Logan Clampett kind of sneaking into this thing. He's a second off. That's not a terrible distance back. It's not within striking distance at the moment, but if there's some sort of an issue with the drivers in front of him, this could fall back on him. We got a battle right now for 4th and 5th position. Luza is starting to close in on a battle between Derek Bordeaux and Brian Schoenberg. But Luza in that one machine, still one of the fastest cars on the racetrack.
Yeah, he definitely is, and we had mentioned how he was a lap down. You mentioned this a few times ago here, Evan, that just the speed that he's been able to carry even on the long run, it's going to be it's a tall order, but he's definitely closed the gap just a little bit here over the last few laps. But that's a tall order to try to pass all these championship caliber drivers, and especially to get by last season's championship Ray Alfala to try to get the win here tonight.
Conti playing for very different stakes than what Ray Alfala is going for at the moment. Michael Conti with his first race at NASCAR at iRacing's top oval level in 3 years 2 weeks ago for the Michigan International Speedway, did not make the cut to compete in this series' first ever playoff. So Conti looking for redemption, looking to go back to back, but also looking to play spoiler. His objective, and the objective of everybody besides the 8 championship competitors, to keep those drivers in the fight, to not let them get a free ticket to Homestead. For Ray Alfala, this may be one of the biggest races of his iRacing career. For somebody who is so accomplished as a 3-time series champion, never has he been in a situation where one race win would guarantee him an opportunity to fight for a championship. He has that in front of him tonight, and at 20 laps to go the next time by, he could almost taste it.
20 laps to go next time by, and Ryan Michael Luza moves himself up into the top 5, getting himself past Brian Schoenberg into 1 and 2. And again, Schoenberg didn't fight without one machine at all. So Ryan Luza is one of the quickest cars on the racetrack right now, getting himself through traffic cleanly, and no one's pressuring him for it. But keeping an eye on that battle up front, I have to say, I think it's going to be a little bit sour for the 5 machine. Even if he comes away with a win tonight, he barely missed that mark to get himself into the chase after that win last week at Michigan. And I think it might be a little bit of salt in the wound here tonight, Evan, if he makes it 2 in a row, knowing that he is not in this chase for the championship tonight. A lot of thinking of what perhaps could have been.
And it's not as to neglect some of the funning going on throughout the field as we keep the cameras trained up top. There's good fights going on all throughout, the likes of Nolan Scott in a couple of battles, all the 20 cars really on the lead lap doing a good job, but I'm just hesitant to take those shots away from the 2 and the 5 because they are so tight on each other that Alfala makes a small mistake and he will be pounced on immediately by the 5 machine. In other news, Ryan Luza, maybe the fastest on the racetrack, and he just got a spot. Picked one up from Brian Schoenberg. Next into the headlights was Derek Bordeaux, and picked that one up very easily as well. He is now up to 4th position inside of 18 to go.
Yeah, he is up to 4th. He's definitely making ground as far as positions on the racetrack. Problem is, he's still 2.6 seconds back. That hasn't changed over the last 5 laps or so. So he may be quick at getting around these guys right in front of him. The problem is being able to catch that 2 of Ray Alfala. I think at this point the lap time's pretty similar between Ray Alfalla, Michael Conti, and that one machine of Ryan Luza. It's going to be tough, I think, for him to even remotely try to catch these guys. Of course, barring if we have a caution here late in this one.
Fastest car on the racetrack last time by Ryan Luza. Alfalla with a 29.0, Conti with a 20.0, Luza with a 28.9. It's quicker, not by a lot, but a tenth of a second is still quicker. Not fast enough to make up the 2.5 second disadvantage that he sits at. He got one of them when he was an 8th. He needs another yellow, I think, to get himself up close enough to be able to fight for him. He's faster. He could really give something to him on a restart, but I don't see him making up a 2.4 second disadvantage without anything else interfering in this one. The 44 Clampett is not safe, though. The one is about to be all over his bumper down the back.
Ryan Luza has been about 2 to 3 tenths quicker every single time around the racetrack than that 44 Logan Clampett. So when Ryan gets there, I think he's going to make very short work of Logan Clampett. The big question mark has to be is what can the 2 and what can the 5 do on their tires? And the one of Luza looks to the inside, and Clampett, again, doesn't even fight it. So Luza driving his way through this field unchallenged. Now, the big question mark, Ray Alfalla and Michael Conti. How do their tires hold up? The one we know has been strong all night on the late runs as we're approaching inside of 15 laps to go here from Darlington. That's going to be where the 2 and the 5, I think, really start to fall off. But what will Ryan Michael Luza's pace look like once we get to that point?
He really needs to get up on it if he wants to get up to Conti. The gap, 2.5 seconds, and 14 laps to go. He's going to need at minimum 2 to 3 tenths per lap if he wants to get up and challenge for the race lead. That may be a little bit too much to ask out of the one machine. He does have maybe one shot in the dark besides the yellow, and that is if Alfalla and Conti start to fight with each other, then they'll slow each other down. Side-by-side racing, not as quick as going around here one by one. Check yourself up, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about early in this one. If somebody's holding someone up, you see 3rd and 4th cars get into the fight. That may be what Luza's banking on. I don't see it happening, though. As this green flag run continues to stretch out, Alfalla pull it away now 5 tenths in front of Conti. The biggest gap that has been off the restart.
Yeah, it definitely has. The gaps of all these drivers pretty much been kind of basically staying the same. It looks like Michael Conti, the handling's falling off of his race car. He's starting to lose contact now with Ray Alfalla. He's dropping back about 6 tenths now. We still got Ryan Luza, minimal. He's basically just matched lap times again with Ray Alfalla that last time by. So still 2.5 seconds. Field's starting to spread out. Tires are definitely worn. They want a little bit more, but they're running out of time.
Not a close call, a couple of laps ago with Dylan Duval on your shot there. The 42 was able to hang on. Somehow, those drivers did not wall it. That was what Ryan Luza probably saw at his rearview mirror and got his hopes up for a moment. But we stay green for the time being. Next time by 10 laps to go from the Darlington Raceway as we close it on the checkered flag in this one. The run to the end is brought to you by Blue DEF, the official diesel exhaust fluid and DEF equipment of NASCAR. As always, have to remind you that if a yellow comes out in the final 5 laps of this race, we will not restart. There is no NASCAR overtime, and this race will not have an opportunity to go back green if a yellow comes out at lap number 179 or later. That small glimmer of hope continues to fade for 2nd, 3rd, and on back.
I think especially for Ryan Luza, because you know you need that yellow, and really the window is starting to close very rapidly where you might be able to get it inside of 10 laps to go, 9 to go when they get to the stripe. And Ray Alfalla has opened himself up about a 9/10 of a second advantage over Michael Conti. Then it's about a further 1.6 seconds back to Ryan Michael Luza. But Luza has been a couple tenths quicker than Conti every single time around this racetrack. Another tenth that time goes the way of Luza. So reeling in the 5 is what Luza's doing right now, but the number 2 machine of Alfalla, he's done a fantastic job since we went back to green of maintaining the life in his tires, and he's just been able to maintain that gap to the number 1 while stretching the gap over the 5.
Couple of fights still inside of the top 10. Bobby Zelensky 6th, Derek Bordeaux 7th. Not fighting at the moment, but only a couple of car lengths amongst those drivers. Into the fences, Derek Bordeaux. It'll cost him time. and Adam Gilliland, a lap car, dives out from behind to avoid getting into him. Those are the close calls that Lusa continues to hope that one of them would bring out a yellow. Ray Alfalla absolutely does not want anything to do with whatever is going back. He doesn't care if you're fighting for third. He doesn't care if you're fighting for 33rd. Do not wreck the cars and bring out a yellow. Alfalla, 2 wins on the season. Comes into tonight second in the championship, second only to Ryan Lusa, who looked like was going to have a devastating night. After a penalty dropped him off the lead lap, he has miraculously come back and run in 3rd position. Alfalla, though, doesn't matter that a 3rd win would tie him for the most this season with the driver of the one. The only thing that matters at this point is he is less than 10 laps away from a shot at a championship, what would be a 4th opportunity for him.
Yeah, it's exactly what these guys are shooting for, this brand new chase system that came into effect. This is what it's all about right here, doing exactly what you need to do to get the job done. Ray Alfalla has done that here, leading pretty much since about that halfway point, minus all the pre-flag pit stops, of course, but he has just been absolutely on a rail. The adjustments the team has made all throughout the race have just been spot on. Michael Conti, can't throw anything away from him as well. He's had a fantastic night here to back up that win in Michigan 2 weeks ago, and he's still getting it done, trying to hang on to that 2nd spot.
20 drivers total run on the lead lap at a moment. You can again see the drivers who are fighting in this playoffs by the blue names that you'll see on them up at the top of your screen. Those drivers fighting in his first ever playoff, and something that we talked about, in fact, what seems like a long time ago now, Randy, when we did the NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series preview show, as we take a look back with the fight with the 33 to 94, is what kind of effect this playoff would have. In any other season, if you look at this point in the season 1 year ago, there were not 8 drivers in the championship because 8th place and, for probably 7th, 6th, 5th, and 4th were too far back. Alfalla and Sturgis had a fantastic run. It was a 2-horse race last year. This playoff brings more drivers into the equation. If you were 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th at this point last year, you did not have a chance. This year, you did. And the thing that I wondered was, would those drivers take advantage of that opportunity? So far, the drivers who have found success tonight are the drivers who have been that good all season long, and Alfalla make it a case for this one.
It's fantastic having, like you said, the potential championship contending pool basically quadrupled from what we saw last season. And right now, if you're Bobby Zielinski, if you're Logan Clampett, Christian Chandler, Corey Vincent, Marcus Richardson, you have to be counting your lucky strikes that a bad finish tonight wouldn't necessarily take you out of it. Not that all those drivers are having bad finishes tonight, but for everybody, it's only going to take one race to lock yourself into the championship race at Homestead and get yourself potentially a chance at this championship. The popsicle sticks are in the air, 2 to go this time by as race leader Ray Alfalla worked himself down the back straightaway for the penultimate time.
The battle that you were keeping an eye on, Letterello and Diaz, remains still at the moment. 94 hasn't been able to get to his inside. A fight I mentioned a little bit earlier, Schoenberg, Zelensky, and Reynolds, they stay single file for 5th, 6th, and 7th. And Ray Alfalla heads to the final 1.366 miles, the all-time winningest driver at the NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series at iRacing's top oval level. A 3-time series champion is not only about to become a 3-time race winner on 2017, but he is going to be the first driver to take a golden ticket. With this win, Ray Alfalla is going to punch his ticket to the championship at Homestead, Miami. Checkered flag, he wins tonight from Darlington.
Fantastic run by Ray Alfalla. That's championship caliber driving right there. Getting the job done, qualifying well. Just getting the job done from the start of the race to the end. Staying out of trouble. Smart pit stops. They stuck to their guns as far as their strategy was concerned when we saw other drivers really just mixing it up, staying out long, short pitting, all that. Ray Alfalla, they stuck to their guns and it worked out for him.
And sometimes, admittedly, if somebody's able to have a very, very strong run like Ray Alfalla did tonight and go through some adversity, a caution flag mixes it up as he burns it down on the front straightaway. Sometimes those aren't the most exciting races to watch. Oftentimes you would rather see Alfalla take a win like he did at Michigan a year ago. Late race restart, fresh tires, and make a pass to the final quarter. But none of that can take away with how good of a run the 2 machine had tonight in a deserving victory. 3rd on the season, of course the biggest because he gets that ticket to Homestead, and he will have an opportunity to become a 4-time champion in the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series. But those aren't the only storylines that we'll take out of this one, Randy. Michael Conti getting hot late in the season. I know he's not a part of the playoffs, but backs up with a win with a P2. You got Ryan Luza with a masterful comeback to salvage tonight. He'll lead the championship standings for the drivers who will be going in based on points. Logan Clampett, a fantastic result for another driver who's been looking to get those consistent finishes. So I think there's a lot to take away from this aside just the 2.
Oh, certainly. I mean, yeah, you can talk about Ray Afala being as good as he was. You can talk about Michael Conti potentially getting into these last couple of chase races and maybe, you know, breaking the party up for these guys. Talk about Ryan Luza, of course, Logan Clampett. I think the other one you really need to talk about, that 83 of Bobby Zielinski. He's probably thinking tonight a big old what could have been if it hadn't been for that issue with Josh Berry trying to come down onto pit lane. And, you know, I think there's going to be an exciting last couple rounds of this championship before we get to Homestead, next run out at Chicagoland, then, of course, at Dover in about 4 weeks' time.
The good news is we'll get an opportunity to hear from a lot of the names we've been talking about. We'll do that in just a minute. First, let's look top to bottom at your RaceSpot TV full race results for the opener of the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing Playoffs. Ray Alfala gets a win. He is cleared to round number 2. We will chat with him at Homestead as well as at Victory Lane tonight. He's going to have an opportunity to be a part of the first ever 4-driver winner-take-all in 2 months' time. Michael Conti, great result to come home second tonight with Ryan Luza, championship competitor 3rd, Logan Clampett as well in 4th, and Brian Schoenberg able to hang on to that solid P5. We'll be chatting with those names momentarily. Bobby Zielinski is able to walk away with a solid P6 tonight. He's got Blake Reynolds behind him in 7th position. Derek Bordeaux is 8th. Big pickup for Taylor Hurst from 29th on the grid to 9th at the checkered flag, and Dylan Duvall rounds out your top 10.
How about starting 30th to finish 11th here tonight for the 33 of Joe Letterello. Philip Diaz will finish in the 12th spot. 13th goes to Chris Overland. Nolan Scott will finish 14th here tonight. Corey Vincent with that surprising run, or I should say strategy call. He'll end up finishing in the 15th spot. 16th goes to Marcus Richardson. Zach Novak finishes 17th. 18th to Christian Challoner. Brian Blackford will hold out to finish 19th. And rounding out your top 20 in the last car in the lead lap here tonight, that's 39 of Michael Johnson.
Will Cooley's going to come home 21st with Jimmy Mullis, who we saw have some issues tonight. He'll finish 22nd from 8th on the grid, not the night he was hoping for. Casey Tucker finishes in the mid-pack, but that's a net gain of 18 spots for him. He needs to be happy about that. Nick Ottinger, 24th. Matt Busa, 25th. 26th for Ryan Lowe, another gainer in your mid-pack. 27th for Jake Nichols. Jake Sturgio's 28th. Chris Steerburn 29th, and Brad Davies rounds out your top 30.
Only one other driver who comes home 1 lap down. That's Andrew Fayash, the 3rd in 31st position. Handful of drivers 2 laps off of the pace. That includes PJ Sturgis in 32nd, Adam Gilliland 33rd, Timmy Hill 34th, Tobias 35th, and Byron Daly in 36th position. Mitchell Hunt comes home 37th about in this one. 38th is David Rattler, P39 for Chandler Krizik. Josh Berry, a rough go at it this time around. Kicks off the drivers who end up behind the fence in this one. 4 drivers retire. It's 40th Barry, 41st Brandon Schmidt, 42nd Kenny Humpy, and 43rd Tyler Hill. That's a look top to bottom at your RaceSpot TV full race results. We will take a quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back to the Lady in Black, we will chat with Ray Alfala, 3-time winner in 2017 and the first of our championship 4. You're watching the 2017 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing on RaceSpot TV.
There are 3 different paths if you want to call yourself a world champion of sim racing. NASCAR, open wheels, or endurance racing. But no matter which one you take, you can guarantee that the journey will always be tough, which few will ever complete. The iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, the premier road racing series in sim racing, started with a new car taking center stage. Then, it was Martin Kroenke resisting any challenge thrown at him to break the 5-year stranglehold of Gregor Hutu as being world champion. These drivers and teams are not just competing for pride, they're competing for money. And with over $20,000 in prizes for each of the series up for grabs, drivers really do put it all on the line.
The NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing, is the premier NASCAR eSport series featuring the cars and tracks from the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. The 2016 campaign saw a return to the top of the mountain by Ray Alfalla as a 3-time Oval World Champion. The march to that championship was not easy, though, despite the fact that Ray Alfalla took home the most points in series history. It just also happened to be the tightest championship fight we had ever seen. These guys are set for the 2017 campaign.
The Blancpain GT Series hosts the top GT3 endurance teams in sim racing, with groups of 3 or more drivers sharing the wheel. This is a championship you can't win alone, and you need the same determination, passion and drive from your teammates to be successful. They often say that it takes just one mistake to lose a championship, and in team racing, it may not be your mistake that costs you the win. Last season, VRS Coanda SimSport won the championship by a single point. This year, who will step up to the plate?
These are the iRacing eSport World Championships, the pinnacle of sim racing competition. Catch it all season long with live coverage on iRacing.com/live.
Welcome back live to the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina, where now we are through 13 races on this 2017 NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing. But most importantly, we are through the first round of the playoffs. We'll go trackside in just a minute, chat with Ray Alfalla. He is your race winner tonight. Do want to take this opportunity to remind you that tonight's coverage of the NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series, powered by iRacing, is brought to you by Peak. At Peak, we're not afraid to mix it up with the big boys, and this is why we've been actively involved in motorsports for over 30 years. We identify with the straight shooters like John Force and Clint Boyer, just 2 of the truly great racers who've been a part of the Peak family throughout the years. Today, Peak still aims to shock the motorsports establishment party as a way to showcase the excellence and competitive quality of our family of brands, but mostly because it's so much fun. You can look for our drivers and teams to challenge the heavy hitters at the likes of NASCAR, the NHRA, dirt late models, and more. For more information, go to peakauto.com today. We transition now over to the driver of the number 2 machine. It is checkered flag number 3 on 2017, but I would argue no win more so important as we head down with the driver and your race winner tonight from Darlington, Ray Alfalla. Ray, congratulations on another win. I think it's big in the fact that you now tie Luza with the most wins all season, which can kind of be a stat that you guys like to jab back and forth at each other. But most importantly, this win gets you straight into Homestead for the first time ever in the history of this series.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a new feeling, you know. We haven't had playoffs before, and my prediction is still that 2 of us are going to go by wins and 2 of us are going to go by points. So really, I just kind of wanted just to finish top 5, 3 races. You know, just kind of. I think whoever does that guarantees themselves in as far as points go, because at least one person goes in by points. But what a car, man! I mean, just a few hours before the race, we were throwing stuff around and. Bobby came up with something really good about, a couple hours before the race, and we adjusted on it a little bit more before the race because, the weather was a lot hotter than everybody anticipated, and, it worked out great. I think, Bobby would have been right up there. He had some issues of his own, but he recovered well. But, I'm glad to get the virtual racing school another victory, and now we just cruise around for 2 races, and we're going to Homestead.
Yeah, the technicalities say you do have to start those races and to be in them, but you guys are clear through to round number 16. In this one, though, the playoffs is always something to which people like to say that the guys who are going to perform at those peak moments step up. And we started this race, you rolled off in third, and it was all guys with the blue windshield banners up at the front of the field, the likes of Novak and Luzin, Zelensky all in it around you, and made a good run as Luzin made a move to the race lead at that point. Then he found himself with a penalty, and I still not quite sure how he was able to get back up to third, but at that point it looked like that nobody was really able to get up to you. Conti stuck with you through the first cycle of the green flag service, but you were able to open it up to 4 seconds after that. Darlington is a racetrack that is supposed to be very difficult, a racetrack where there's not supposed to be any sheet metal left on the right side of the car. So what was it that made it so smooth up there up in front for you?
This series is just kind of, it always happens this way as far as, we have a couple rough races midway through the season, and everybody thinks it's the end of the world and we're the dirtiest drivers in the service. And then, and then you have a couple races like we had at Michigan and tonight where it goes green forever. I mean, you had over 40 drivers out there at Darlington in a hot, slick track, and we went green for several laps and green flag stops and everything. So, everybody in the series should be proud to put the show they put on, and I don't think anybody can say anything negative overall about the racing in the series. I think we get criticized a little bit too much when things go wrong, and then we don't get the praise as a group of drivers when we do well. But I'll definitely give the field the praise too, because everybody just did a good job, and I got to give a lot of thanks to Sliphanger Motorsports, thanks to Turkey Hennion. He changes stuff on the car for me when I ask for him. South Rosetto, they're helping me guide me through traffic. Liam Brotherton's saying lap times to the leader. So it's just it's a really good team effort all around.
And tonight was a fun one, I think, for us up here, too, not only because, as you noted, the racing on the track was so good, but also because it was throwback night. So we had a really good time kind of looking through the field and checking out some of those paint schemes. The two had a fair amount of TV time up front, and as you burned it down on the front straightaway. So maybe for those who didn't quite catch on to it, tell us about that Rusty Wallace car.
Yeah, well, the reason I run the 2 car is because I grew up a Rusty Wallace fan. Actually, the first race I ever went to was the 2005 Homestead Cup race, which was Rusty's final race. So that was pretty cool getting him to see him race in person. I met Rusty last year at Homestead during championship weekend for the first time, and it was really cool. And I haven't run a Rusty throwback each of the last 2 years yet. So I wanted to run one this time, and it's awesome that it went to victory lane. This was the scheme he ran in the year 2000. So I'm sure it's an iconic scheme out there. When I was racing, a teammate, Bobby Zelensky, he was in the Dale Jarrett special. So Rusty and Dale racing for the lead at Darlington. I'm pretty sure that was pretty cool to watch.
We look forward now with 3 races left to go on the season. I feel like the more unknown part of the way this playoff format would work out for you would be the opening round part, because you've known what it's been like to go into Homestead having to basically go head-to-head with somebody in a very tight championship, and if not, just get a really good finish to win. So you guys are familiar with that concept. Going into there with the pressure of a championship on the line, you've been able to knock that out 3 times. But now that the kind of unknown of the opening round is gone, what's the objective for you guys for the next 2 weeks into Chicago and Dover? Is there anything that you can pick up from those?
Really, for me, it's just about getting Bobby in there as well. He does a lot of setup work and is a big part of why we're fast, and he's also in the playoff hunt. So I'm just going to do everything I can to help him out and get to Homestead.
I'll let you get out of here and get on with your evening rate. Before we do, as always, though, the sponsors and the shout-outs you want to say hi to.
Yeah, well, I want to say, thoughts and prayers to everybody over in Houston area, Texas area. Of course, we know they've gotten a record amount of rain and flooding. So if you don't know, you can text Harvey, HARVEY, to 90999, and that's the American Red Cross. That'll donate $10 every time you text that Harvey to 90999. If you want to, donate, help the cause. There's a lot of people without homes, and people that we get to race, on virtual, and then comfort of our homes, and then some people, had their whole house or wherever they live washed away, and obviously some people lost their lives. So you can do that to help out, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and it'll be weird, being locked into the final race with and the whole system. But I'm ready for the challenge, and we'll start practicing for Homestead already.
We had the names highlighted on the screen in blue for those drivers who are in the playoffs. We'll have to come up with a color over the next 2 weeks to put your name in, because you are safe for the next 2 races, safe for the next 4 weeks. So we will definitely see you in Chicago and Dover. Wish you the best of luck for those. But on to Homestead on October the 10th. We'll catch you then.
Thanks. I'll see you guys.
That is your winner tonight from Darlington. 3rd win on 2017, and most importantly, punching his ticket into the championship. Ray Alfalo will fight for a title in a handful of weeks' time on October the 10th. The work is not done for the rest of the playoff competitors, and even for those not in the playoffs. Michael Conti comes into tonight off of a win 2 weeks ago, puts down a fantastic performance to come home in second, and Andy Kessler is trackside with him.
I am trackside right now with the driver, the number 5 Peak Antifreeze Chevrolet, and that's Michael Conti. And a win 2 weeks ago, Michael. You come out here tonight at Darlington. Fantastic showing, starting 12th, battling for the lead, running right up there with Ray Alfalo for the majority of the second half of this race. Walk us through this one, and also with this, obviously the long run, kind of we saw you kind of fade off. It just seems like one little part of a setup might have had you with a shot to make it back-to-back.
You are 100% correct right there. The car was really solid all night. We didn't get the best qualifying position. The weather was a little bit strange, so I tried to be conservative to put a lap down, and that put me 12th, so not too bad. But the car was really good right off the bat. Moved up to the top 5 the first run. Really pretty good in the long runs. That one run, though, I suggested to Brandon Hastings that we make a tire pressure adjustment, and that pretty much killed the car for that run. So we had to wait for the next pit stop. We put it back, and then it was pretty good after that. But Ray definitely had our number after 20 laps. He just could drive up off of the corners a lot better than I could, and Luza was coming as well there at the end. So I'm thankful that this was 183 laps and not 184 or 5, because it was looking pretty sketchy there at the end with the one coming up so fast. But really proud of everybody, Hastings and Nick Ottinger and everybody that's kind of grouped together here the last few weeks. And we've turned this thing around 180 degrees, and we're headed in the right direction. So unfortunately, we didn't get Peak into the playoffs, but we are the best of the rest in 9th right now, and we're looking pretty good to hold on to that. And we got some great points tonight, got on TV. I know a lot of people are watching tonight, so just want to thank all of them for tuning in. And it's been a good few weeks here for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has. And we talk about not being, with this new style, with the championship format they have, and not being included in that, at least for this season, Michael. You're able to be up front, like you said, competing for this. How important would this be for you to maybe steal a win even over the next couple of weeks from these guys that are really trying to get it done and get qualified there for Homestead?
Yeah, I know a lot of the guys that are in the playoffs are hoping that an outsider wins a race, so one of their playoff competitors, if you will, so they won't get that automatic berth into Homestead. So, hopefully everybody's well wishes and good thoughts toward us winning. Hopefully that comes to fruition here in the next couple of weeks. But, obviously we're going to need more than positivity and good thoughts to make it happen. So we've been executing really well. The cars have been phenomenal the last month or so, really, or 4 races dating back to New Hampshire. I don't think we finished worse than 9th in the last 4 events. So that's really good. So we'll just keep at that. We've got to work on a few things for the long run to get up there so we can compete with the 1 car and 2 car. But we're really close. And like I said, we've turned this around, and it's due in part to a lot of hard work by a lot of guys that have come together to make this 5 car run well again. The 55 car with Brian tonight, he got his first top 5 in 3 years, so super proud of him. want to give him a shout out there. He did a phenomenal job coming from 24th or 5th to finish 5th. So hats off to him there. And Chicago is typically a good track for the both of us. I've run well there, and Brian has too at times. So we'll put our heads down and bring another good Peak Ford Fusion to Chicago in a couple of weeks, and we'll go after it then.
Well, it sounds like fun. You guys have definitely, like you mentioned, have turned it around over the last couple of months, and obviously it's good. I'm sure it feels good to get back up there, win a race like you did a couple weeks ago, and then follow that up with another solid top 2 here tonight. So, Michael, with that said, sponsor shout-outs, anybody you left out there?
Yeah, just again, big thanks to Peak and Old World Industries, their parent company, for sticking with us the last few years when it's looked a little bit rough at times and the performance really hasn't been there. So they bought into me, and they've always stuck with me through thick and thin. So thanks to them, as always. JDR Graphics for putting together a really awesome car tonight, paying tribute to Kyle Petty and the Peak cars from the late 80s and early 90s. So hope everybody enjoyed that. And again, just a big thanks to everybody at Team Conti for putting a lot of hard work and effort into this deal the last couple months here. And looking forward to Chicago, and we'll hopefully improve one spot and get us a W there.
That's what it's all about. Congratulations again, second place run here tonight, Michael, and we'll see you in a couple weeks in Chicago.
All right, thanks, guys.
There you have it, Michael Conti, a top 2 finish that backs up the win from a couple of weeks ago. And how about Ryan Lusa with the comeback story of the night? He's caught up with Randy.
Yeah, I'm stood by with the one of Ryan Luza. And Ryan, what a run it was from you. Qualified second. That one machine was hooked up all night. Before we talk about what happened to the race, how'd you get that one machine so good on the long run? You seem to be quickest of everybody after about 10 or 15 laps.
We just tried to make good changes before the race started. Nobody was ready for that weather to be that hot. Like, I hadn't tested anything within like 15 degrees of that. So we just tested in the 15-minute warm-up session, and just made changes here or there, and it seems that we hit on the changes just right. And the car was really, really good on the long run. Just had to take care of the tires. Man, I'm just kicking myself. That was a winning car, and I blew it for us.
Talking about that, you got that early penalty after coming to the restart for changing lanes, came down pit road, and you went a lap down. How confident were you, though, that you could come back and get a strong finish after you went from about 7th or 8th in line and drove yourself all the way to the front of the field, got your lap back the good old-fashioned way, and then continued to stretch the gap over Ray?
I didn't think I was going to do it. I was just going to sit there behind. I was like 7th or 8th in line, as you mentioned, and I was just going to sit there where I was and hope for a caution. But the car had other plans, and I just started like blowing by people on the high side. And thanks to everybody up front, they just kind of gave me the wave by whenever I got the run. So thanks to everybody up there for at least making it a little easier on me, which really helped a lot to get that lap back. And just slowly ran laps, kept gaining time, pitting when I thought I needed to. And the caution came out at the right time because the people that were on the other strategy had already had like 10 laps on their tires, and they hadn't passed me yet. So I leapfrogged everybody on the like three stop strategy, and I was already up to like 8th. So it just, everything worked out just about perfectly. So I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more. Maybe another caution there at the end to have a shot at it, but the car didn't really excel into the long run. So really happy to come away with a 3rd place finish after going a lap down, 41st, and doing most of that without a caution. So great car, just great racing by everybody. I had a ton of fun.
Now you mentioned that Ray, of course, puts himself into Homestead essentially after the win tonight, and you coming home in 3rd, you're the 2nd best finishing championship or chase driver of everybody else. Well, how does that make you feel? Is there anything comforting knowing that even though you didn't lock yourself in tonight at Darlington, that you have both the points bonus for your 3 wins over the course of the championship and then finishing 3rd, beating everyone else except for Ray? How confident, how safe does that make you feel into your ability to get yourself into Homestead?
Well, it definitely helps a lot. It's a little comforting to have just a few extra points gained on on the guys, but in the end I can't make mistakes like tonight. I need to go into where we're going, Chicagoland, and just qualify top 5 and try to run top 5, and if I do that, the next 2 races I'll be in. So just no mistakes, use the points buffer I have just in case something goes wrong, but just keep running solid just in case something does go wrong.
Well, talking about those next 2 races, Chicagoland 2 weeks time, and then Dover 2 weeks after that, where is that one machine feeling most confident?
We've yet to test, but you know, we put in a lot of effort here at Darlington. We're going to put in a lot of effort for Chicagoland and Dover just the same. I don't know about Chicagoland, but Dover is like one of my best tracks, right up there with Darlington. So hopefully we get some of this hot weather at Dover too. I think it made the race a lot more fun, at least for me. So just really confident going to the next 2 races, and we'll be testing hard.
All right, well, thanks for joining us tonight, Ryan. Congratulations on the huge comeback race. No, it's probably a little bit sour to not come away with a win, but a 3rd place is solid, as you said, from 41st. But before we let you go, who's that one machine got to shout out or thank after tonight?
I got to thank Fast Track Sims for staying with me on the chase. The other sponsor hopped off, the primary sponsor, so thanks to him. Any sim racing stuff you need, dirt rigs, asphalt rigs, he makes just about everything. And thanks to everybody at SimWorks Racing for all the work we put in. And I really got to say, please pray for everybody in Houston. It's really crazy out here with all the flooding, so just keep them in your thoughts.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Ryan. Hope to see you run strong in a couple weeks' time at Chicago. And well, Andy, throwing it back over to you, the number 1 machine, he wants to spend the next couple races racing on the surface of the sun. Let's see what that number 44 who you stood by, Logan Clampo, how he wants those races to be.
Yeah, I'm down here with Logan clamping on pit lane. And Logan, you qualified yourself into this championship chase. You had a strong showing here tonight. Started 11th to come home with a 4th place finish. You ran top 5 pretty much the majority of the night. Walk us through your race.
Well, I don't think I've driven that hard for so long. Just and forever, man. I was just kind of, I didn't have my fan blowing on me. The room was about 80 degrees, so it was kind of painful. Just wanted to race to end, and I'm glad that last caution came out because it kind of messed up Vincent and Novak there a little bit, and they're really strong competitors. But I don't think the race could have gone any better for me. I do know that my internet wasn't the greatest, so I apologize to the people behind me and stuff. I was probably hitting the wall on their screens and stuff, so apologies to them. Hopefully it'll be fixed next week. But no, the flam, the drill spill, JDR graphics, Chevy SS was absolutely perfect tonight, and I couldn't have done it without the Annex guys, especially Jake Sturgis and PJ Sturgis. We all worked pretty hard on the setup for Darlington and got it just perfect for the race, and just, yeah, again, I don't think it could have gone any better.
Well, obviously we know this championship, the way the format's set up, potentially at least one driver will make it in on points. You had a couple fast guys right ahead of you that are championship contenders that did finish ahead of you. Obviously, Ray Alfala locking himself in, but finishing 4th, it's a strong finish for you with Ryan Luzer just ahead of you here as we collect points for the next couple more races here after tonight. And obviously, moving forward, we got Chicago, we got Dover, a couple different types of racetracks, the 1.5 miles, and then you got that high banked, high speed concrete surface. Size up the chances, the 44, to have another couple strong runs, couple more top 5s, maybe even a win to lock yourself into Homestead.
Yeah, well, you know, obviously anything could happen. You obviously saw Novak and Vincent, especially Novak. Actually, Bobby almost got screwed there during the run. I think he got spun out and hit on pit road or something. Just really anything could happen, your favorite track or not. But Chicago is one of my favorite tracks, and Dover, that's a decent track for me. It's better than Darlington if I can turn quite a bit of laps there and still in contention. Then hopefully I can make the top 4. And I'm just really hoping that a few competitors won't win the next couple races, and it'll give me a better chance at the top 4 and to fight for the $10,000 at Homestead.
ultimately, that's what it's all about, Logan, and you're able to get off on the right foot here tonight with a top 5. Congratulations with that, and we'll give you this opportunity. Sponsor shout-outs, anybody you'd like to thank.
Well, like I said before, I'd like to thank the Drill Spill, especially Flam, for being on the Carlin and Harrison throwback, and JDR Graphics for the absolutely beautiful scheme. It's probably one of my favorite schemes ever. And then the NX Racing guys, and then our team sponsors, V Racing, iAnalyze Racing, and the Sim Lab, and then especially thank you to my supporters. They're a huge part of my and past career here, so I definitely couldn't do it without their support and for them cheering me on in the YouTube chat.
Clamp Nation at its best, and always in the chat. So congratulations again, Logan, and look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks in Chicago.
Thanks, Andy.
So there you have it. 4th place finisher Logan Clampa gets the job done, and let's take a look. It's been 3 years. It's been a while since Brad Schoberg's got the top 5, but he drove his butt off from 24th, and he's caught up with Randy.
Yeah, I'm stood by with the 55 of Brian Schoenberg. And Brian, you sort of did it the quiet way tonight, worked your way from 24th. I don't think we really talked much about that 55 machine directly. I know it got on the cameras at some points, but how did you manage that net gain of 19 spots over the 250 miles tonight here at Darlington?
Well, it's it took a long road to get here to this top 5 finish. We had a very, very, very great car when we were practicing. And the weather and qualifying threw us for a loop, and, you know, being an old man like myself, messed up my qualifying lap, and we had to dig ourselves out of a hole the entire race. And just that weather was insane. I mean, I was really relying on experience, being able to get through long runs and everything with that. It was just absolutely insane the way you had to drive the cars, and I've run maybe 1 or 2 races here at Darlington before in my life, so I had a pretty good idea of how to save the car for the end of the race, and we just progressively and patiently worked our way up through the field. And I'll tell you what, I thought I would be worn out, but I'm actually feeling really good right now. And it just, once we got towards the front of the field, the car just seemed to get better and better and better. And we didn't touch a single thing the entire race until I was racing with Derek Bordeaux for 5th with about 15 or so laps to go. And I felt bad about that. I really didn't want to squeeze him into the wall or anything. We just were racing hard, and that ended bad. I'm glad he still got a good finish out of it. And then battling Bobby for 5th at the line there, I got to say, I respect Bobby so much. He's my California buddy, and we talked a lot running through the Pro Series last year. And I really hope he's okay. I was never going to touch his car if I knew we weren't going to finish the line right there where we were going to finish at. We were going for one of those Ricky Craven, Kurt Busch classic Darlington finishes, and we pretty much got it there. We touched a little too hard, but we both got, you know, to the line 5th and 6th, and it was my first top 5 in 3 or so years, like Andy was alluding to, and I was going to make sure tonight was the night we got it because it's just been way too long.
It's fantastic watching the two of you come to the start finish, and you're right, it did very closely echo Busch versus Craven from, I believe, 2004. Just needed one of you out there in a tied machine. But talking about that 55, everyone has been mentioning the weather and how slick it's been during racing conditions, but I actually have a slightly different question, is that Darlington is generally known for a very tricky pit entry here, especially trying to do so at pace, and we saw a lot of cars have issues getting onto pit road today. See a couple of ejected pit lane entry attempts and a couple failed pit entry attempts. How much did that weather play a part in just keeping those rear tires gripping up as he dropped the car off the banking and tried to make green flag pit stops, especially in a race with as many green flag pit stops as we saw tonight?
Oh, it made it way harder, to tell you the truth, but going back to, you know, when I was alluding to, I've run a couple races here before in my life. I just took my entry to pit road low and slow, and I figured I wouldn't fail, and I made it every single time. So definitely relied on experience tonight, and you saw a lot of old veterans up there tonight. So definitely fitting for this race and running all the throwback schemes. I had a Ray Alfala throwback scheme today, and I thought I represented it pretty good. Hopefully Ray's happy with seeing that car run up front like that. And you know, really, I just want to thank everyone on Team Conti. It's taken us a while to get here, and it's taken me a very long time to get used to how we do things on this team. but everything is great over here. I just got to thank Michael Conti and Brandon Hastings so much for letting me be part of their team and organization. It just feels like I'm at home again, and it just feels great to work with both of them. And Jason Loafing and David Ankeny, my co-crew chiefs, have been doing a great job for me, and it was just one great night. And we've actually had 3 great finishes in a row, and when I joined this team we were 35th in points, really scared about trying to be in this series for next year because the top 30 make it, and now we're up to 20th, 15 spots up, so that's a huge net gain. So this is just absolutely incredible the way our team has come alive. And you know, Conti won last week and he backed it up with a runner-up today, so I'm just having a blast right now, and it feels like the days of old for us. So I'm just having a great time. And you know, when you're older you get to appreciate these things a little bit more, because back when I used to run really good in peak when I was 21, 22, you kind of take it for granted, and now I can really enjoy it, and it's fantastic. Today was just awesome. It was a great Darlington race.
So not back home again in Indiana, but back home again at Team Conti. Awesome season for you, what has been, Brian, ever since, you know, like you said, that net gain of 15 spots on the points is a fantastic result and a fantastic top 5 for you here today. You've already gone down who you thanked did that preemptively, a bit of a preemptive strike on that one. But Brian, you have yourself a good night, and I hope to see you run strong in these final 3 races of the championship, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Can I thank my sponsors real quick?
Go for it.
Pro Geek and Main Performance PC have been with me ever since the beginning, and I just appreciate them being with me all the time, and King of Chin Productions, and just everybody on
Don't
Team
shout
Conti.
out Josh.
No, really? Well, everyone
He's my
on Team
teammate.
Conti
Don't
rocks.
shout out Josh.
Everyone on Team Conti rocks, and it's been a very long road to get here. And also, very quickly, I want to thank, honestly, the folks at Team APC, because they helped me last year get back into the series. And the breakup in the middle of the year was really painful, but I had some teammates I really liked over there, including Jimmy Mullis and Colton Davis, and Taylor Hurst made me a better driver back in the day. But now I'm back home with my family over at Team Conti, and we have some great tracks coming up the rest of the year. So I'm just looking forward now to everything to end this year, and hopefully we can carry it on to next year. But I just want to thank everybody also that runs this series, and just thank the fans as well. Top 5 at Darlington feels great. Thank you guys.
No problem about that, Brian. Again, hope to see you run strong. But Evan, back to you. Number 55 machine of Brian Schoenberg after a 5th place finish. He is super hyped about that one.
Yeah, it was a great result for the driver of the 55, and as you noted, he started right in the thick of things in 24th position, which makes him as well one of the biggest movers, which tends to never hurt things. And outside of tonight, there is no doubt that the championship picture was going to look a little bit different. Did we have a look at least could talk about what that championship picture will be like as we get set to go to the Chicagoland Speedway. Andy Ralfalla locked in. He will be in Homestead, and he will be racing for a record 4th NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series championship. That leaves now 3 spots still available for 7 drivers to fight over. Outside of tonight, Ryan Luza, Bobby Zelensky, and Logan Clampett occupy those spots 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the playoff grid, respectively. Zach Novak, as he continued to talk about this, he finds himself 9 points behind Clampett in 5th. Corey Vincent is 10 points back in 6th. 12 points back in 7th is Marcus Richardson, and 14 points back at 8th is Christian Challoner. So even at the bottom of the barrel, 14 points is not a lot over the course of 2 races, so this thing is far from over with.
Oh, it's way far from over, and I hope everybody tunes in a couple weeks and on from that, because anything can happen. Like you said, we saw exactly what happened to Bobby Zelensky trying to get on pit road. The same stuff can happen. I mean, Dover is going to be something to watch here in about 4 weeks' time. But you know, they got to get through Chicago first. So the points are very close, and you know what? That's what's the nice about the reset, I think, and also like what we saw tonight with the you know, all those blue windshields up towards the front of the field at the start of this race. It's just that's what you're going to see. I mean, all these teams, the focus is on that guy that has an opportunity to win the championship. You're going to see the best out of these 8 drivers over the next couple of weeks, or next couple of races, I should say. You know, before that race in Homestead, it's going to be a dogfight, and I'm looking forward to it. And you can't have mistakes. You know, we saw a couple guys recover from those, like Ryan Luza here tonight. That was just an absolute phenomenal run for him to get back up and get a top 3 out of this. It was looking dismal for a while there. I believe when that caution came out, he was somewhere around like 20th or something like that. I mean, or before that caution, I should say. It's unbelievable how things can change and how they can change in a hurry, whether it's for the good or the bad.
And very lucky that he was able to recover from that, because 14 points isn't a lot. You get yourself a penalty, you know, off of the first caution flying at a race. You drop down to what was 41st position at the time. You finish 41st, you're done, unless you get a win. That is not something that wins will be able to make up. And I'm still looking at the names, Randy, towards the bottom of those top 8, because without this playoff format, Ray Alfalo would have an opportunity to fight for the championship. He'd be there. Ryan Luza would have an opportunity to fight for the championship. This format gives the likes of Richardson and Novak and Vincent, Clampett, those names, an opportunity to get that little bit extra, gets them right back into the picture, and we kind of head to a racetrack that's a little bit more uniform with what we're used to seeing at the Chicagoland Speedway in 2 weeks' time, where those guys have to try to go and pick it up.
The format definitely shakes things up a lot. You know, we talked about it during the race. The fact that last season we only had basically 2 competitors at this point. This time we have 8. Could be down to about 6 or so after this one. A couple guys definitely on the back foot. Christian Challoner, definitely not the race he would have wanted. Same with Marcus Richardson. Basically everyone, you know, the top 4, Ray Alfalo, Luza, Zelensky, and Clampett, they all had good nights tonight. The bottom 4, I think it would have gone... didn't quite go the way they would have wanted this evening, and because of that, they're a little bit on the back foot. But like you said, going to basically one of the standardized style cookie cutter tracks at Chicago in 2 weeks' time, that's going to be a race where I think a lot of these guys are going to feel comfortable. We talked about this in our preseason show back in Vegas earlier this year, and then, you know, shake it up again. We go to Dover, maybe not quite as difficult as Darlington, but you get it on that concrete 1 mile steeply banked oval. Anything can happen, and it's really, of the 3 tracks in the chase, 2 of them are some pretty nasty curveballs that the floor drops out of.
We know one name who is going to fight for a championship at Homestead. 3 to go, and you'll have to be with us next time to find out if we could add a name to that list. But with that being said, round number 13 from Darlington Falls into our rearview mirror. As always, we want to thank you for watching this special presentation of RaceSpot TV on iRacing Live and the Motor Racing Network. You can find out more information about iRacing's World Championship Series online at wcs.iracing.com. On behalf of the entire team who makes these things possible, camera angles provided by Isa de Vallo, broadcast CG by Simon Grossman, Kevin Papey, their entire team, Andy Werder on the graphics, of course, for Will Vincent, Hugo Louise, and the entire team at RaceSpot TV, and for the crew topside tonight, for Randy Channett and Andy Kessler, who were joining us this evening, and as always for myself, Evan Pasoko, to thank you for joining us and congratulate Ray Alfalo, 3rd win on the season, but most importantly, he's got the golden ticket to Homestead, which leaves 3 spots open for the 7 remaining playoff drivers to road to that season finale. Will bring us to the Chicagoland Speedway in 2 weeks' time on the 12th of September. That race and to every race of this 2017 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing can be found right here on RaceSpot TV. Until then, good night.